I now call this meeting of the Silver Falls School District Board of Directors to order. We are going to note attendance first. Everybody's here but Aaron, but he should be walking through the door at any moment. He's coming straight from the airport. Let's go ahead and stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll wait for Aaron to sit down before we move on to the agenda review. So next on the list is the agenda review. I think there's a couple people who want to make amendments to the agenda, so I will take motions now.
So, Madam Chair, I have a motion to amend the agenda. I move that we amend the agenda to place the SFEA presentation immediately following the financial report and prior to the public comment.
Okay.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we place the SFEA presentation immediately following the financial report and right before the regular public comment. Any discussion around that? This is something that is their choice, and Lori reached out and contacted me about that. So I don't think we have any. Yeah, okay, so we'll go ahead and take the vote on that.
Derek?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Josh?
Yes.
Owen?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
All in favor?
And Jennifer, I'd like to also make a motion to amend the agenda to add like a 3.5 right between 3 and 4, time to read a special statement from the board.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we add a 3.5, which would be to read, for me to read a special statement from the board. Any discussion? All right, let's go ahead and vote.
Derek?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Josh?
Yes.
Owen?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
All in favor?
All right, I will go ahead and proceed with the statement.
Do we need to move to approve the entire agenda then?
Oh, yes, thank you.
I so move approve the agenda as modified.
All right.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as modified. Any discussion?
Derek?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Josh?
Yes.
Owen?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
All in favor?
All right. Thank you guys for always catching me on that. All right, I'm going to read a special statement from the board. As a school board, we want to acknowledge the feelings and concerns our staff and community have regarding a recent separation agreement. With a budget deficit raising concerns about the future, reading about an agreement through media outlets can be frustrating. As a board, approving these types of agreements is something that we take very seriously. As with any contract negotiation, the public often only sees the final product or outcome and not how those decisions are reached. For every employee or employee group, these involve confidential discussions, and we are limited in what we can share. What might be perceived as a lack of transparency is necessary to respect every employee group, and all associated employment processes. While this explanation may not reduce frustrations, we hope it does convey how contractual processes must work for all employees, and we do not enter into any of these decisions lightly. And that's the end of that statement. We are going to now move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Let's go ahead and vote.
Derek?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Josh?
Yes.
Owen?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
All in favor?
All right, next on the agenda are student representatives from SHS. I have on the list Bryn Olvin and Alyssa Ogle. I see there is Yep. Okay, so she's not going to be here. We have a substitute. Welcome, girls.
Okay, good evening. I'm Bryn Olvin, and I'm the ASB president.
And I'm Addie Basher, and I'm the Admin and Student Relations Officer.
So to get us started, we're having our 2024 prom this Saturday at the Oregon Gardens, and our theme is Last Summer from Mamma Mia. And as for sports, softball is playing Lebanon tonight, and baseball will be playing Lebanon at home on Friday. Both of our golf teams had tournaments today at West Albany and Lebanon. Boys tennis will be in Lebanon tomorrow, and girls tennis will be at home battling against Lebanon. The track team will be at McMinnville on Friday.
The choir participated and qualified for state and their league festival last week and will head to districts tomorrow at North Salem. Our annual Best Box Ever fundraiser has begun. As many of you know, Best Box Ever raises money for SACA and Medical Teams International, MTI. Our contestants this year are Chris Cervana, Erica Rodriguez, Roman Pack, Ben Moore, RJ Martson, and Kira Bailey. The pageant will be on May 4th, and some of the community fundraisers coming up are a bingo and silent auction night on April 20th, and there will be a food trucks at McGinnis Field during a track meet on April 24th.
We hope to see you at all of our upcoming events. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to administrator.
We did miss number 5, an action item.
Oh, thank you very much. We do have Teacher Appreciation Week coming up. We're going to read a resolution today. Is there somebody who is interested in reading that resolution?
Yeah, I can read it.
Okay.
Silver Falls School District Resolution dated April 8th, 2024, Teachers Appreciation Week. Whereas teachers, school counselors, specialists, and all licensed instructional staff mold future citizens through guidance and education, and whereas teachers encounter students of widely differing backgrounds, and whereas our country's future depends upon providing quality education to all students, and whereas teachers spend countless hours preparing lessons, evaluating progress, counseling and coaching students, and performing community service, and whereas our community recognizes and supports its teachers educating the children of this community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Silver Falls School District Board of Directors proclaims May 6th through 10th, 2024 to be Teacher Appreciation Week. And be it further resolved that the Silver Falls School District Board of Directors strongly encourages all members of our community to join in this observance, personally expressing appreciation to our teachers for their dedication and devotion to their work.
Thank you, Derek. So that week is coming up in May 6th through 10th, and we want to make sure that it's on everybody's calendars. I'd also like for us to have an opportunity to express appreciation as individual board members, so we can just go ahead and do that one at a time.
Well, I know it's not the best of times. I'm not going to move around that, but golly, I sure love our teachers and the resilience they have and how important they are to the community and the district and the family that we have at Silver Falls School District. For all you, I'm so grateful for you, for shaping all of us, and especially me as a kid, and being able to be here now. So, love you guys.
Yeah, I can't express my gratitude towards every one of our educators here tonight, and any who aren't here tonight, just everything they do every day for our kids. You know, the thing I think of always as a teacher is selfless, right? They're giving. They're always willing to pour into kids and try to improve the lives of our kids. And I'm just, you know, having had, you know, 2 already go through Silver Falls and 1 almost on our way out, I'm just really grateful. So thank you.
Go ahead, Phil. I've had the opportunity to get into several of the buildings and want to get in the rest of them for years out. And one overriding thing in every building I've been to is just the upbeatness of the staff in the buildings I go to, and how they're there for the kids, and got them towing the line, but the kids have smiles on their faces too, and that says a lot. And realize things aren't real good right now. We all know that. But it's great to see the staff carry through and what they're accomplishing. Good job.
As a father with 9 kids that have been going through the district and in the district, and lots of teachers, I can't tell you how many stories that I've heard from my kids about how various teachers have just shown real concern and interest in their lives. It's been a really important part of their growing up, and it's really what I think of when I think of Silver Falls is our teachers that makes it different than other places. And so as hard as we have it, at this present time, I'm really thankful for our teachers, the backbone of our district.
Yeah, I've had 3 kids go through the district, all the schools, or throughout their whole career here. And I just want to say thank you to the teachers for doing it, especially these past few years, especially now. It's been a tough time to be in education. And I know some young kids that are following that track on career, so I'm glad to see that people are still coming along to do it. So thank you very much.
And thank you as well. The impact that you all have each and every day is massive. I definitely, as a father and parent with 3 kids, see the day in and day out the work that you all put in. We as parents give our kids to you all to invest in. Half the time of their waking hours are away, and you are shaping the next generation. So we see you, and I definitely appreciate it. So thank you.
I'll just say that being a teacher is one of the most demanding jobs on the planet, and when I go to work as a teacher, I can forget about my own children because I know they're being taken care of, and so I can take care of other people's children, and so I appreciate that very much. Thank you, teachers. We appreciate you. All right, I think we need to vote on the resolution.
So I'll move I'd move that we approve Teacher Appreciation Week Resolution 4-8-2024.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the Teachers Appreciation Week Resolution 4-8-2024. Any other discussion? All right, let's vote.
Derek,
Yes.
Phil,
Yes.
Josh,
Yes?
Owen,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Jennifer.
Yes.
All in favor.
All right, if I haven't missed anything, now it is time for administrator and staff reports because we're moving the SFEA slot to after this presentation. And 8A is financial report. I'm going to turn it over to Kim now. Kim?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. So as many of you know, in early March, we partnered with outside school finance officials to conduct independent reviews of the Silver Falls School District finances. Tonight, we are very thankful to have Jackie Olson, Executive Director for the Oregon Association of School Business Officials, here with us. Not able to be here this evening is Linda Darling, Senior Analytics Advisor with Lynn Benton Lincoln ESD and Frontline Education. Both Jackie Olson and Linda Darling have been completing independent, multi-year, parallel financial analyses of Silver Falls School District revenues, expenditures, enrollment, staffing, and more. And so tonight's financial presentation will be made by Jackie Olson herself. She'll be presenting her findings, her analysis, her recommendations for Silver Falls School District. And I want to publicly thank both Jackie and Linda for the countless hours that this has taken. They've invested an incredible amount of time in this very thorough and complex analysis. And with that, we'll have Jackie Olson up. Thank you.
Hi, Jackie. Thank you for
And
joining us.
if we get her slide presentation pulled up, please.
All right, they gave me the clicker, so now I've got the power. Thank you for having me. I know this is a difficult conversation, to have. And so before we start, I just want you to know that you can interrupt me. You can ask questions, as many questions as you want. I'm here for you guys tonight because if you don't get the answers that you need, then you're going to have a hard time making decisions moving forward. So please don't feel like you can't interrupt me at any time. As Kim said, I'm Jackie Olson. I'm the Executive Director for the Oregon Association of School Business Officials. Before taking this role, I spent a number of years in school districts and ESDs, and as an ESD employee, I got to work with many different districts, and so I have seen finances. I've done audits and budgets for multiple districts, multiple size districts. I think it's important to realize that with the number of school districts. We have 197 districts and 19 ESDs across the state, and there's that many different ways to do school finance. So there is never A plus B equals C, and we all do A plus B equals C. School finance is complicated. People grow up saying, I want to be a teacher so they can be celebrated on, that National Education Week in May. Nobody grows up saying, I want to be a school business official. And so, I just want you to know it's a difficult job, and we all tackle it very, very differently. So with that, I'm going to jump in unless you guys have questions to start. You guys, and up there I can see if I start looking at too many small numbers, I'm going to have to put my glasses on. Joys of getting older. So today I'd like to start with going over what our financial analysis is, an understanding, hopefully, of a little bit of how we got here. A review of your financial data from this year, and then my recommendations that I have for the Silver Falls School District. Jumping into the analysis. So Linda Darling and I both completed an analysis of your financial information, and so we were given, I was given access to your financial database, so I'd really like to thank Kim for her work in getting us the information that we need in order for us to do this work. Whenever we needed or requested information from the district, they have been extremely responsive, and I really appreciate their help and partnership, along with Willamette ESD. Dr. Joe and Russ Allen have both been tremendous partners in this process because it is difficult and it's confusing, and there's lots of different parts to it and moving pieces. So this analysis was done at a point in time, and when you change one number, it starts changing everything. And so this is where you are today. Any decisions that you make going forward will change these numbers. So these are not set in stone. You're always able to improve or also go the other direction. So by the time that we've completed our analysis, we're anticipating that the district is going to end with a negative fund balance in the general fund of just over $4 million. And you have a cash shortfall of over $1 million anticipated at June 30. And I want to talk about the difference between a fund balance and a cash balance, because when we really get into that, people are like, you have money in the bank, what are you talking about, Jackie? And those are two very different calculations. So when we talk fund balance, we are talking about all of the revenue and expenditures that are counted as part of a fiscal year. So we know that your fiscal year is July 1 through June 30. But you have expenditures that when you send out that check at June 28th, somebody puts it in their car, they lose it, they hold it until August, and they're like, crap, I forgot it. Here it is, I go deposit it. We've already counted that money out the door. That's part of our fund balance. We've said it's gone. But your cash balance at June 30 recognizes that you still have that money in the bank. So when we talk about fund balances, we're able to accrue and recognize revenue and expenditures that still relate to your fiscal year 23-24 for 60 days. So all the way until the end of August, which is why our audits don't start until the fall, because we're still working, whether it's grants or contracts or checks that we're worried about clearing, or we completed a project but we haven't got that invoice, and by the time we get the invoice and we pay it, there's just a time lag in all of that. And so the fund balance is what everything that could be included in that fiscal year, and cash really is the money that I have in the bank today. And that changes every single day, because every time a check clears or every time you write a check or issue payroll, that amount will change depending on whether you're sending it ACH check, recognizing revenue. If it sits in the desk for a couple of days, it's not cash until it's actually in the bank. Any questions on fund balance versus cash? Because it's an important thing to know as we go forward. I did include some basic information as part of my presentation. As board members, you may say, I know all of that, but I did hear that we might have a few community members here today as well that I think might help a little bit tell the story as we go through this. All right, so how did we get here? We pulled a number of different points of data to see what can we see, what are our trends. So we started with enrollment. I'd like to thank ODE for their help in pulling some of this data. We didn't have to go back and dig through things. ODE with assistance sent us some information to make it really easy. We've looked at staffing, and of course we've looked at revenue and expenditures, and we've looked at multiple fiscal years. While it's important to know what's happening right now, you really want to know how the heck did we get here. So here's a quick look at your enrollment. This starts back in 2017-18, and then you can see a sharp decline in enrollment. It's starting to go back up. It's projected to go back down again next year. This is actual AD. Yep, go ahead.
Oh, why are we expecting a decrease in enrollment? Or where do we get that projection from?
Great question. So I looked at the reports that were submitted in, that were due at the beginning of January to say what was next year's enrollment going to be. So my assumption is that that looks at your graduating senior class. Are your incoming kindergartners going to fill that? Do you have kids that are moving out of the district? Do you expect a large influx somewhere else? So usually we see a little bit of fluctuation, and that is not ever static. That can be changed at any point. So this is an estimate at a point in time. Usually when schools open up in September, what we get in there and do is say, oh, look, our enrollment's either up or down. We need to adjust our enrollment again with ODE so we make sure that our state school fund payments are flowing correctly with that number.
Thanks, Jackie.
Yeah, Jackie, I got a great report. I was going through it earlier today, and I'm like, this helps. This really is good. Thank you. How do we measure enrollment? I mean, because I'm hearing people, I've heard conversations and articles about chronic absenteeism, and then they don't count it. Is there a...
That's a great question. So the information that you are looking here at the screen is ADMR, Average Daily Membership Resident, and this includes only your district. This does not include your charter. So I wanted to keep charters as a separate conversation. So ADMR is the number of days that a student, and ADMR versus ADMW. So let's start there first. So ADMR is, I count as one. I'm Jackie. That's who I am. You get one, you get one, you get one. ADMW is Average Daily Membership Weighted, which means all the weights that go with the state school fund. So you have things like special education, poverty, pregnant and parenting. There's all those different categories on there, and they all have a different number. So by the time, if I get coded as one of those extra things, I get extra weight. So I might end up being a 1.8 student, so the district receives funds for 1.8 even though I'm still just Jackie. You might be 2.0, you might be 1.3. So everybody gets a different weight based on how you qualify. And then they also look at attendance. So somebody that attends 100% of the time gets 100% payment. They don't, it's average daily, and so they do look at the daily average. It's very minimal if you miss like a day of school, but it's not, that gets into the minutia. But if they're here most of the time, I'm going to say you get most of the funding. If they come October 1, somebody else is going to get payment for September through October. You're going to get payment then October through the rest of the year.
So, I mean, are we, I guess the question I've had people talk to me about, are we penalized for chronic absenteeism?
If they miss more than 10 days of school and they're dropped, yes. If they miss 10 days throughout, those 10 days are going to be subtracted, could be subtracted out throughout the year, yes.
Okay. So there is, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Other questions on enrollment? All right. This is an interesting slide. So this data, again, starts in 2018, and I know that those are small numbers, but I want you to pay attention to the orange line versus the blue line. Hopefully you can see those colors. The blue is our licensed staff across all funds, and our orange is enrollment. And so this is one of the data points that when we started looking at where did we start having some discrepancies. When your enrollment started going down, your staffing also didn't go down at the same percentage. There could be a number of reasons for that. Part of this data also includes ESSER funding, and so even though with declining enrollment, there was never any adjustment for staff. And so if you never adjust for staffing at a point when you have declining enrollment and you continue to staff at the same level, at some point you're not receiving state school fund dollars to support that level of potential service.
Does this staffing level, does it include the Title I teachers, the specialists? I can't, maybe it's in the fine print. I can't.
So it's all licensed staff across all funds.
All
yes.
fine. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
So, Jackie, in 2019, it looks like that line, they're right on top of each other.
Yep.
And what does that mean? Does it?
That means that they grew at the same rate. So not the same number, because you're always going to have more students than staff, but they basically grew at the same percentage.
What's the ratio to make sure they're the same as like 1 per 20? Is that how, like, I'm trying to understand, like, an FTE would be equal to student enrollment. In 2019, like, what was the difference? Is it like 1 teacher per 30 kids? Because I'm trying to see this big disparity. Obviously, I see what we're saying. We have a lot of staff, and we dropped our enrollment, and we kept a large amount of staff. But I guess I'm trying to say, in 2019, numbers-wise, how do they come up with the number? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a straight number to number. So it's not every 1 to 30. It's looking at overall growth. So if you have 500 kids and you grow by 3%, and you have 30 staff and you grew by 3%, that they should be at the same point because they both grew by 3%.
Okay.
So this allows you to do apples to apples comparison because you're going percentages, not ratios.
Correct.
Thank you.
I guess, kind of to follow up on when I was asking about are they Title I, did we have a higher needs population to serve and therefore got more funding for those higher need kids that needed a higher ratio? We're just, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
It does, and I didn't put funding on here because it's one of those things that when we start looking at general fund compared to other programs, it's difficult because grants really have to be self-sustainable. If I get $100,000, I can spend $100,000 and that's it. And so we didn't put funding on here, but yes, there are times when your student population, like if you could have the same number of students and your weights increase because your amount of special education goes up or the amount of poverty goes up. So it doesn't, that does not explain, you can't see that difference here. All we see is a student to staff. What were those increases or decreases?
Okay.
And Jackie, this is my last one on this slide. I'm imagining that this is not unique to our district. This is probably post-COVID. Almost every district has probably had the same issue.
This isn't even an Oregon problem. This dilemma that you see on your screen right now is nationwide. Student enrollment is going down. And we haven't necessarily adjusted the staffing to go down, and there's many reasons why. Every single district has a different story. And so I'm not saying that this data is wrong and that you didn't need the staff. I'm giving you a story of how you got here in the financial world.
Jackie, just maybe one more. You may not have the answer to this. In your experience, it looks like our gap between student enrollment and staffing is about 12%. Is that consistent with what you're seeing around the state, if you have any input or insight there?
I would say it depends on the district and what kind of funding that they have. So there are districts that have a higher staffing ratio, but they also have a local option levy. That's a whole nother chunk of revenue that you guys don't have. And so you really have to get into the weeds and comparing districts that are apples to apples, and I didn't do that for you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions before I go on? Great questions, by the way. Are we having fun yet? All right, so this just takes a quick look at all staff. For comparison, the last slide had licensed staff. This looks at all staff. So from everybody from who's out taking care of your grounds to our teachers in the classroom to our administrators. And as you can see, staffing has continued to increase.
What do the numbers at the bottom represent?
Number of FTE.
Okay, the number of staff.
and I wouldn't say the number of staff, I would say FTE, because if you have 0.5 and 0.5, we counted that as 1.0 FTE. It may be 2 people, though.
Thank you.
All right, so we went through some enrollment and we went through some staffing. We are going to jump into revenue, and this whole report is really focused on the general fund, because when we got into the special revenue funds, it gets really complicated. So just reminding you, we are talking general fund dollars here. So I think it's important to remember all of the different things that play into our general fund and what the big pots of money are. So of course, the biggest source of revenue for you guys is the state school fund. Local sources is your next one. So those are your property taxes. And even though they're part of the full formula, local revenue is considered property taxes. We have intermediate. We're going to go through all of these. And the beginning fund balance, I just want to highlight, is the savings from the prior year. Sometimes that's planned and sometimes it's unplanned, but it's important to have a beginning fund balance, and we're going to take a look at that. All right, the red line on here, that is this year's projected. The 2 green lines are prior 2 years. So you have at the very bottom your state school fund, and that red line is what's projected for this year. And as you can see, as a percentage of your budget, your state school fund makes up the majority of what is in there. So you are dependent on the state school fund, and we don't get to generate revenue off the state school fund. It is what it is. We don't get to negotiate that. It's an amount of money that's calculated statewide and sent to you. The change on here I'd like to highlight is the federal sources. The district recorded all of the ESSER funds within the general fund. So one of the changes that's part of this, we see some anomalies with Silver Falls, is that a lot of districts recorded ESSER funds in a special revenue fund and kept them outside of that to maintain consistency. So you can look year after year and you're going to usually see increases or decreases that make sense, that you can say easily off the top of my head, I know what that is. This makes it a little bit more difficult in some of your expenditures because you had ESSER dollars in here. And so it looks like in your 21-22, your federal funds were much higher than they are in 23-24, and that's due to you have used all of your ESSER funds.
No, the ESSER funds were the basically federal COVID dollars, essentially?
Yes. And you had 3 buckets of ESSER funds. ESSER 1, 2, and 3 was the easiest way to describe them. And for this fiscal year, you had $65,000 left, which has already been allocated, and that was it. So you had spent pretty much everything you had in all 3 of those awards up until this point. All right, so I did talk about your beginning fund balance, and this is a pretty big visual. This is your beginning fund balance, your actual in 21-22, 22-23, 23-24, and if no changes are made, this is what we project your beginning 24-25 fund balance to be. I have recommendations, but I want you to see this, that even through ESSER, so with the amount of federal funds that were being awarded to the district, you guys overspent revenue every single year and consistently used fund balance. At 23-24, your beginning fund balance was about 1.5%. My minimum recommendation for a district is 5 to 8%. If you're looking at a bond, you're really aiming to get the best rating, 15%. And so you have a huge discrepancy between where you are and where you want to be. And I know this community wants to support a bond and do this, and we're going to get you guys back on the right track so that you are in a financial position to get the best rating the next time that you do go out for a bond.
Jackie, you said something at the very beginning. I missed. You said we overspent on something. I missed what you were saying.
So when you have revenue and expenditures and you use your fund balance, it means that you are overspending your current year's revenue that you received. So you spent everything that you received plus some of the savings from last year. And then the next year you spent everything you received plus some of that savings. And so the beginning fund balance is another way to say it's your savings. And if you're decreasing your savings every year and you're not finding a way to replenish it, when we have emergencies, even in our homes, if our HVAC goes out in the middle of summer and we want to make sure we can sleep, you know, at a cool 70 degrees, we have to get that fixed. And where are you pulling that money from? You can borrow, you can use a credit card, but at some point you still have to pay for that. And how do you then fill that savings back up?
Can I interrupt about budget? Because if you have a budget and you have assumed an incorrect or assumed a beginning fund balance that isn't correct, you could still be spending in your budgeted allocation, like the way that your plan was, but that budget actually needs to change because you didn't have the correct assumptions about your beginning fund balance.
Correct. I would say a budget is wrong the minute we put the number on there. A budget is a plan, and that's all it is. It's a guideline. It gives us an overview of how we're planning on spending the money, but you always have to come back and say, what do we actually have? What are our actual expenditures this year? And so a budget is great. It's required by Oregon local budget law. You don't have an option of not doing it, but you always have to right size it and say, okay, based on, I mean, because right now, most districts have a budget for next year that's already close to done or that is done. And as soon as we put it on writing, it's wrong. For us type A personalities, that's really hard to know that we're creating that document and a guideline for you that's wrong, but it's only an estimate. It's a plan of how we're going to spend the money.
Thank you.
All right, expenditures are categorized in two different ways. We talk about functions and we talk about objects. And these are objects. So the most that people know are salaries and benefits. It's also the biggest chunk of your general fund budget, usually about any budget. We also have contracted services, supplies and materials, debt service, transfers, and contingency. And we're going to touch a little bit on all of these. If we look at your overall percentage of your general fund budget, salaries and benefits make up 75% of those costs. So for every dollar you get in, 75% goes to direct staffing. Benefits are everything from health insurance to PERS, workers' comp, unemployment, all of those different pieces that it takes to support a staff member.
Jackie?
Yes.
Does that 75% include the unfunded PERS payments, the unfunded liability to PERS?
So that includes the amount that is ran through payroll that gets transferred to your PERS liability account to pay that debt service payment each year, yes. It doesn't include the full amount in your general fund. Your debt service is included in the 300 funds, but this is the payroll piece that runs through there.
Thank you.
Is this, is 75%, is that a pretty typical number across Oregon?
For a district that is contracted out for a number of services, yes. For districts that have transportation and other things that are included in house, you could see 80 to 85% in some districts. So 75% is not abnormal, but my next slide is all about purchase services because a lot of things are in purchase services that in some districts are included in salaries and benefits.
Jackie, can you explain to me transfers? What
Yes.
is that?
Transfers are a great use of funds and they help the district out. So a transfer is whenever we want to move money from the general fund to another fund, we have to budget it as a transfer. We don't get to just write it. So an example of that is money that you may put towards a facility account and you transfer it to a 400 fund and you're taking money out of the general fund and you're putting it into another account to use it maybe that year, maybe in a future year. Our transfers for you guys this year included a transfer to food service. You have a food service fund that is not self-sustaining, and so we're going to talk about that, but that's where your transfers are.
Thank you. And I imagine purchase services are also subscriptions? Is that what that purchase service?
Well, let's take a look here. So purchase services, it's a category that is pretty broad and can mean a whole bunch of different things. So your big categories for you guys are your payments to your charter schools. That's a huge chunk of money that comes out because your revenue comes in through the general fund as a state school fund payment, but in order to transfer that money to a charter school, it has a 300 object code. So it's paid to them that way. So it's money in and it's money out. You also have your transportation. Transportation costs have been going up the last couple of years. So this gives you, for all of these categories, 3 years of comparisons. Utilities. I'd like to tell you that you're going to be saving money on your heating bill next year. You're not. Utilities are going to continue to go up, and it's not an area that you can choose in your budget to reduce. So what are the things that we can do, and what are the things we can't? Substitutes. Substitutes are going up. Over the trend over the last couple of years. We saw a little bit of a decrease last year, but it's back up, and the projection is to stay high for the remainder of the year. So every time a staff member is out of the building and they get a substitute, that is what is called, and we've statewide, we're seeing a large increase in substitutes cost. It's not just a trend in Silver Falls. Repairs and maintenance are another area that are coded in the 300s. And then 18% of this whole pot of money is all others, and it's a whole bunch of miscellaneous things. It could be travel, some professional development, some other little things, but your big, 18% of 20% of your budget, you start getting, or 20% of 18%, you start getting down to some pretty small numbers. It's about $1.7 million there. It's not a lot of money in a $53 million budget. Questions on purchase services? All right, so we talked about transfers. You asked a great question about it. My news for you is your transfers out of the general fund are going to need to increase in future years. So this is where I'd like to say that the situation you guys are in, it's not a one-person problem. This isn't a two-person problem. This isn't a one-department problem. This is a district-wide problem. There are people in this district that like to spend money. It's great when you have the money, but if you don't have money and you're never checking to say, what's in my pocket right now, or am I borrowing from somebody else? It can create some trouble. And so when we started in looking at all of the different accounts throughout the district, there were 56 separate accounts that ended last year, or you can say started this year, with a negative balance. Some of those were grants or contracts, special revenue funds. A number of them are within your student body accounts. And so we have, whether it is counseling, whether it's clubs, whether it's activities, whether it's classroom budgets, whether it or funds that they've brought in, sports, all of those different things play it into it. And we had a total of 56 separate accounts that were negative. And so that's like saying, hey mom, I need $5. Hey mom, I need $5. Mom, I need $5. And everybody is taken from that. And all of a sudden you have to make a payment. And because you've loaned out that money so many different times, you don't have the cash to pay it. So it is it's a big number that we're looking at. It's not going to be solved in 1 year, but we have all of them identified, and we're going to keep working on making a plan to, of how you're going to get those brought back up to zero.
Jackie, what's typically the controls on that so it doesn't happen? I mean, in my experience, there's generally been some intermediate levels of controls, whether it be a secretary, administrator, whoever, that rides herd on budgets of a teacher or coach or whoever. So how does that typically look?
It looks different in every district. I've told you there's, at 197 districts, there's 197 different ways to do that. There are some districts that have very tight controls over that, and some that don't. You guys didn't have quite as many controls set up. Where some people are allowed to go make purchases, they could use a P card before submitting a purchase order. So I submit a purchase order after I've swiped my card because I needed it at the time and it was handy. I was there, I got it, I needed it, right? But I never went to check to say, did I have the money to cover that expense? And so I have worked with Kim. I've set up some reports in your guys' financial system so we can start running reports on a regular basis. You can get to where you're sending those out. I would also probably recommend training, and this is training for lots of staff. I mean, our school secretaries get put into a number of different situations. Their job is to not only be the face of the school for all the parents walking in, they also get to help the kids, and then all of a sudden they're supposed to also know where their
Be the
you know,
accountant.
who they're helping is in their budget as well. And so what are some ways that we can look at those those different jobs and help people to learn how to check those balances, learn where they are, and be more transparent just about those balances?
Yeah. I have a question. I know that the transfers is kind of a small amount, but you got 56 separate accounts started the year with a negative balance. So that means 56 separate accounts ended last year with a negative account. Should an audit report have caught that for us? Is that thank you for your that face you just made.
It was in your audit in a way that isn't, I broke down. So when
Okay.
you look at your audit in your special revenue funds, where it looks at the fund balance, and you had your general fund was the first category that showed you $736,000, I believe is my number. Your next category was your special revenue funds, and you ended $88,000 in the hole. So those are all your 200 funds put together. And so that includes your student body, your food service, your Title I, your IDEA, the grant that I went out and got for $5,000 because I was a great grant writer, and you know, I told the district office later, and there wasn't a plan for it, and then we overspent it. Those are the things that we see all the time. So you ended $88,000 in the hole in your special revenue fund.
Okay.
So that accounts for all of those added together.
So it was there, and that's thank you. But I guess, I'm not an accountant.
Yep.
These are a lot of numbers, and I kind of rely on my professionals to say, hey, you got a problem here. And if they don't like point it out, we had an unqualified, clear thing, so we kind of go, okay, great. Next topic on the agenda, please. And
That 88,000 was, we had a discussion about it.
Yeah.
okay, thank you. Then
That was the
I guess-
recommendation, the report was to
Okay,
address that.
good. Thank you, guys.
But not the 56 separate accounts. From what I'm understanding, Jackie, you want us to get us to 0. Like, that's the
Well,
goal.
yeah.
That
That's
is
a-
your goal. There are times when, because of where things end in your fiscal year, and that's $56, or 56 accounts, there was a couple of them that was $5, but it still counts as a balance. And so we're not talking, not every one of those is large numbers, but the Medicaid one was over $300,000, and your food service one is over $200,000 in the hole. So when you have those two big numbers, any positive fund balances that you have start getting used up. And so that pot of money that you have that's supposed to be your fund balance just gets spread out between everything else.
Thank you, and I, you know, that's my failing. I'm not an accountant. I'm an engineer. I'm a farmer. And it's just, thank you for reminding that.
Oh, it's
Okay.
Other questions on transfers?
Just, sorry, before we go any further, you mentioned controls, talking about tire controls, you mentioned P cards. Would you recommend, and I don't know if it's in here, but like dollar amount caps before there's a higher level of authorization required?
There's a number of different ways to do that, and I think it depends on who you are. If it's, for me, it never made sense for my maintenance department to have a $25 cap when they needed to go to buy X, Y, and Z, just to fix something. But somebody else that doesn't use their card very much might have different limits. And you guys have a system that allows the business office to assign different limits to different people. So not everybody has the same limit currently. All right, it's great to talk about general fund revenue and expenditures, but I think it's important to take a look at your revenue versus your expenditures. And so this shows you your expenditures are in purple, your revenue coming in is green, and this is where your fund balance is where it is. You are consistently overspending your revenue. And that's the big point to take away here.
And that includes the ESSER is included in that.
So even when you had that influx of federal funds, you were still spending more than you were receiving. All right, in your, I don't know how you guys got it. There was a separate report, financial report provided to you. I did a couple of different reports because I want you to have all of the information. We're going to walk through each section of this, but I do think it's important for you. Sometimes it's helpful to be able to see the whole darn thing and what it really looks like. So Linda Darling and I tackled this very different way. She used a different software that your financial system dumps into, and she looks at lots of projections, your history. The report that I like to use, it again pulls data directly out of your financial system, and it compares the current year to the prior year. So we say based on, and we get percentages. So this looks like a lot of columns, but there's even more on the spreadsheet, because as business officials love our spreadsheets. And so it looks at percentages, and it says what's higher based on how we've operated in the past. What are we really expecting this year? We can still update and change this information as we know it, but it starts creating projections for us every single month from July 1 moving forward for the entire year. And it's updated as many times as you want. So you can run this daily, you can run it monthly. My recommendation is that you start looking at a report, whether it's this one or something very similar to this, on a monthly basis at a minimum. So my recommendations for board members. And I do trainings for OSBA. I've done trainings with superintendents. So I've done a lot of this. And my 3 recommendations for the school board members is that you should be receiving actual revenue and expenditures every single month. You should be receiving a projection of what your fund balance is every single month. And you should be receiving a report telling you where you are based on your budget appropriations, because that is the board's legal authority, and it's the ①1 thing that you should be looking at to say, are we where we're supposed to be, or are we overspending? So those are my recommendations for you. Go ahead.
Recommendation number 3 is specific to the budget.
But it looks at total expenditures across all funds, yes.
Jackie, those 3 again, please. Sorry, I don't want to, I can track it down online, but I want to get this because it's important.
1 is that you need to look at your actual revenue and expenditures at least on a monthly basis. And you could, I'm going to show you a lot of line items. I don't think you necessarily need all of this detail every month, but I'm over showing it to you this month because I think you need to know it. Number 2 is based on those actual revenue and expenditure projections, where's your fund balance? And then the 3rd is where you are compared to your budget appropriations.
And this is something that we had not been receiving regularly. I think that I reached out and asked for it in December, and there was a commitment to, moving forward that we were going to get these. But I do want to just say, especially to the audience, everybody listening, that, I know that for me, I was caught up in bond stuff, and so I didn't ask for it until December because bond was done. So I think that that was something I regret, and I want to also just give everybody else a chance to weigh in on that as well.
Yeah, I'll go, Jennifer. I mean, because I've never, the projection out toward the end is what I've never seen or understood. I just see a bunch of numbers and things, and I'm like, I'm a farmer. I can drive by a field and just look at the shade of the color of the grass and kind of tell you what's going on and what's going to happen in a few months. I can't look at these unless someone really spells it out for me. And you trust your professionals. You hope that it's going to happen. When I go to the doctor and get a blood test, he doesn't give me the results. I assume he's going to tell me if there's cancer markers on there that I got to worry about in a few years. And we weren't given that. Our checks aren't going to cash in June. Someone need to tell us that. But we don't know how to look at those numbers and project out there. Even though, yeah, the data's there, but we're not professionals. I used to work for Boeing for 2 years as an engineer in interiors. I kind of know what's going on with some of those, not the causes, but I can be conversant in that and why rivets are coming loose. I can be conversant. I know that, but I don't know this stuff. So,
yeah,
thank you.
Jennifer,
I am so sorry. I am so sorry. That's about all I got to say.
Jennifer, like you, I kind of, when we started hearing the percentages that we maybe, it was more kind of in looser percentages back in the fall about where we're going to end our fund balance. I like you, kind of wish I would have pushed a little harder for the harder numbers rather than waiting to have it like we had in February. And we finally got when it all came real in terms of this is what your actual deficit is. I look myself, I take a lot of personal responsibility in it and say, looking back on it, I think like you, Jennifer, you kind of in bond land, your headspace is there, you're coming out of a failed bond, trying to regroup and trying to say what's next. But yeah, that's the thing I wish, personally, I would have pushed a little bit more on and asked for those actuals in that time frame, because I would have loved to start working on that back in the fall, rather than here we are in February into March going, oh my gosh, we have this deficit and now it's even larger than what we thought. So yeah, I definitely take ownership on that and wish we would have discussed more in the fall, and wish I would have pushed for that harder.
So I think I've been doing, like most of my other board members here, just reflecting on our own experience, and then, how that experience could have been different, so we could have, recognized problems sooner and given us more time to make adjustments. I just keep coming back to a couple things, and I'm thinking about how much time it's taking you and Linda and the rest of the team to go in and really identify what the problems are. And I'm thinking about your experience relative to like mine in terms of school financials and numbers and the complexity. And I just wonder, are these the type of reports that the school finance director is looking at daily, weekly, monthly? I mean, typically, and then providing to board members and boards, or because it seems like we did know that we had overspent by a relatively smaller margin a couple of years in a row, and of course there were some reasons for that, but I think to see this huge fiscal cliff that we're at now is a total shock to everybody. So I guess, yeah, kind of rambling thoughts there, but just trying to figure out how we can, obviously avoid that in the future, and really do our jobs in a way that protects the community.
I would say that business officials do this differently, and it really also depends on the needs of the board. So sometimes you have a board member that is filled with finance people and they want to see these details. You also have board members. I used to create some charts and graphs, and I had people that asked me to change the color. They didn't care about the numbers. They wanted a different color on the graph. And so we're always trying to figure out what do we show and how do we watch it. This is something that I run at least on a monthly basis. I know usually what my projections are, and then if something happens during the month, if a number changes big time, I should know, I should be able to identify what that is.
So, Jackie, when we were doing the audit report a few months ago, I was having questions, but I never really got answers on, like, when we're setting our budget, where are those numbers coming from? I remember we had like food services, $300,000. We were expecting, got about 150, or you're saying closer to 100. Where's the 300 coming? Like timber funds. I remember seeing something like $150,000, and we got like 1,500. Are these state-based numbers? Like, because the budget committee's coming up here, I think this next month. We're starting. I'm sure you and Kim are maybe giving us a foundation to build on that. I'm sure it's going to be vastly different from what we have here.
It is.
Where are those numbers based off or coming from?
That's a great question. So there are numbers. So let's go back to last year. So if we're looking at your 23-24 budget, let's talk about what's happening last year. We were in the middle of a legislative session. And so during a legislative session with no approved budgets, we are making a best guess. It's like standing back, taking a water balloon and hoping I hit something on that wall. I mean, we have an estimate and we get close, we hope. But we don't, the state hasn't given us a budget. So ODE is given estimates off of estimates off of estimates. We're making estimates off of those estimates, and it's always a moving target. So some of that information comes from ODE. Others, we have to really look at like Title I. Your federal funds, we're already hearing from the federal government to expect flat funding or even a slight decrease for next year. So if we're looking at that, I'm saying, okay, if I look at your number, I'm not going to increase it at all. I might give myself budget authority somewhere else in case a grant goes up or down, but on that one fund, if I'm looking at title, I have an idea of where I'm going to hit. It's never going to be that exact number, so everything is an estimate. Other ones, like food service, I go back and look at history. How many students do we have? How many breakfasts are we serving? What is our lunch count? You've got some free and reduced. You have purchase meals. You guys have a pretty big food service program that has lots of different pieces. It really is are you going to go in and buy lunch every single day next week, or are you going to skip next week and then you're not going to do it till next month? I don't have those projections. So part of it is always this moving target. The hard part is making sure that you're checking it to say, what is the revenue coming in? What is my expenditures? And if we're seeing something way out of whack, we have to have a conversation. We should stop right now. We know that we're going to have to increase our transfers out of the general fund to support the food service fund because it's not sustainable this year. Or maybe it's doing so well this year that we don't have to make that transfer and that money gets to stay in the general fund. Those are the conversations that you can have, but the budget is an estimate at a point in time. This year, the second year of the biennium, we have a pretty good idea of what your state school fund payment's going to be. The budget is approved. We're getting 51% of it. We know what your enrollment is. Here's our number. But everything else, again, like food service, is a moving target for me.
Thank you, Jackie.
So Jackie, let me ask you then, in terms of the budget process, the board's responsibility in that, and just take one specific example, the food service revenue. What's our role in actually vetting that number? Because I'm thinking if we have to vet every number and every revenue item, every expenditure item, that's probably not realistic. But what kinds of things can we do to, I guess, ensure that those folks that are putting that together have oversight, and are doing the best job possible?
So I like to come to the budget meeting and with some information on that. So on a fund like that is so volatile, I would say I've looked at your counts for the last 3 years. Here's our average, and I could bet, you could have one slide, one page that would support that. Here's how we got to this number. Is it right or wrong? I don't know. We're going to see next year as we look at our actual revenue and expenditures. The part about the budget is that we're asking for the appropriation and the authority to spend the money. We don't get to spend the money if it's not there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or there has to be a backup plan of, do we have money in the general fund to transfer to that to do that?
And I think that's key. And when I say this, I'm saying just in general board, no matter what 7 individuals are on it. But over our last several years, it was very apparent we were overspending and not getting a financial reading each month, keeping track of that, and then it was being overspent, and that, it happens 1 year, but it happens 2 years, happens 3 years, that sort of thing is what we as a board can watch, and with the monthly revenue and percentages of what we got, we don't need to get into the weeds necessarily, but have that overview. We can tell, hey, if 62% of the year is gone and we've spent 98% of the money, we've got a problem. So.
Yes, you're correct.
Okay.
We're going to ask you as business officials to not get in the weeds during the budget
Right.
process.
No.
Because we're going to look at the appropriations. It's one page. That's what we're asking you
Right.
for authority. We're giving you all this information, but really that's not your job to know and
Right.
be in the weeds. It's our job to provide you with the information.
Right.
One thing that I also wanted to ask you about too is, kind of what you were mentioning to Owen about, looking at the last 3 years worth of data in order to, have a recommendation for like the food service, how many meals they were going to be served. The COVID years kind of
Threw you completely off.
That's right, and I know that plays into this,
Yes.
and I know that actually probably plays into some of the changes in the information that we were receiving, because at some point it was like, well, this is not normal. Do you, anyway, I just
Exactly.
wanted to mention that I think that was has played a role.
And there are times like a district goes district-wide free and reduced. It changes their complete fundings. They're not getting any paid meals from students, and they're getting it all from state and federal sources. And so if you're just doing that either partway through the year or a full year, you don't know what that is. Again, we give you projections based on this is our best guess at the point of time to give ourselves the budget authority to see how it goes, and we're going to have to revisit it as we move through the year.
Just a couple thoughts, and just on the conversation piece, I think, one, the ownership, and then lessons learned, like we've talked about, not getting those financials that we should have been getting. Instead of asking, we should have demanded. And I think that's something to keep in mind moving forward, to make sure that, you know, you can see the trend and should have been asking some of the tough questions, and to your point of not getting into the weeds, but maybe we should have gotten into the weeds, as we look at this massive cliff that we're at now. So I think there's some ownership there, and definitely moving forward to make sure that we are getting the information that we need to make decisions or recommend course corrections earlier before we get to the spot we're at right now.
I think the hardest part for you guys to be in is if you don't have the data that you need and somebody brings something to you and asks you for permission to do something, and you say yes, you're making it based off of whoever's presenting that information. And so I think the question that I would be asking right now is, where's the money? I think you guys need to ask that for a while. Where's the money? How are we paying for that? That sounds great. I'd love to do that. Where's the money?
Yeah, and I guess I would, you know, in watching this over the past few years, I always knew that the ending fund balance was trending down, and I was looking forward to next year, like, okay, we got to get on this. This is ridiculous. But then it just fell off a cliff, a $4 million cliff. And so I'm going to ask a question here: has a crime occurred?
In all of my
Or-
analysis, I do
Okay.
not find anything, no crimes that were committed. This is just
Okay.
revenues down, expenditures are up. It's a miscalculation.
Because everything that we was, you know, like, I'm not an accountant, but I knew that we were like, this is no good. It was a constant topic. Our revenue, our ending fund balance is too low. We got to get on this. And then here we are. So I'm sick to my stomach when I think about the future here.
And just to say that was the plan. We, at last year's budget committee cycle, that was clearly the plan, like to start recovering an ending fund balance, starting 24, 25, like that was gonna be like the big push. So that is something that we were all aware of, and at the same time, we cut it really way too close. I mean, obviously, we're in a deficit situation.
Kind of along the line, what Tom just asked too, like, you know, we had been informed about a month ago when we had that Zoom meeting talking about the budget, and we found even on the revenue side a large magnitude of errors. I think that day was around $1.7 million, if I'm remembering the numbers right. How does a couple of funds, and I think it came out of 2 funds that were overstated, or however we want to say it, how does that happen? I mean, how does one overstate something by $1.1 million in a single fund?
Remember, it's not wrong. That was their best guess or estimate at that point in time. And that's the really hard part, because that revenue was, you know, predicted last February. Even though we may not have seen it, you don't know exactly, you know, if ESSER is like the one thing that I can talk about right now that is a great example of this, because it was in your general fund. How much of ESSER are we going to spend this year? I know what may be earmarked for salaries and benefits, but maybe I have a large construction project or something else. And is that going to start June 15th and be done by June 30th? Or is it going to get bumped out because a contractor wasn't able to make it in, and then it didn't happen until July? So when we're looking at money, we're trying to determine how much are we using right now, and when might we use it? If it doesn't happen now, we're going to need it next year. And so I need to give myself the budget authority to spend the revenue next year. But if I don't have the revenue, again, that plan still has to be adjusted. So I don't think that your budget was wrong at any point. I think it was an estimate just like every other district across the state.
As per what they thought was going to come in.
Yes. Or you used it all last year and that revenue wasn't then available to use this year, so then you have to make that adjustment at that point. You guys didn't approve a bad budget. It's not your fault for approving a budget that was incorrect, because every single school board does that. It is wrong the minute we give it to you.
What do you mean it's not a bad budget?
It's not a bad budget in that I don't see things that are way out of proportion. Your budget matched the trends of what your district was doing. You know, besides the federal revenue that ended up being down, you know, your overall expenditures matched kind of where you were going. You've just added more on top of that. So if you wouldn't have added, you may have been where you should have been within your budget. So part of it is the budget you approved met your needs and gave an outline of what the plan was for this year.
Jackie, when you go forward, are you going to show us where you think we added?
Oh yeah, I am.
Okay, thank you.
I can't see everybody's face behind me. I'm not sure if they're rolling their eyes like, oh, here she goes again. Okay, so we're going to walk through the financial reports. It is 3 pages long. Because it is very small numbers, I broke this up into sections, okay? So general fund or revenue is what we're going to look at first. The top section of this report includes all of the funding sources that are part of your state school fund formula. So your state school fund, the money you get from the state, your property taxes, and the one that used to probably be quite a bit bigger for you guys was the state timber. And that is just a crapshoot. That's what I'm going to tell you. Every year, it doesn't matter what district I'm working in. Sometimes we expect $100,000 and they get a payment in May that's $2 million. And then you know that you have to pay it back. And then we're expecting money and then it doesn't come in. So that's part of the state school fund formula where it balances out. So there's a reconciliation period that happens and you'll be getting a either positive or negative adjustment this May for what happened last year. So for this year, we go through everything. ODE collects all of the information, all of everybody's revenue, everybody's expenditures, all the things that play into this. And next May of 2025, you'll get an adjustment for this school year, positive or negative, based on all the enrollment and everything else statewide. So from this report, what I want you to look at, because it is a lot of numbers, you have your budget, your 23-24 budget. It shows you your year-to-date actuals. This report was updated for you on Saturday. It was a fun Saturday. I have in there what we have projected for the remainder of the year and what your total estimate is for fiscal year 23-24. The column next to it is where you are either over or under budget. So it gives you just a little bit of reference on whether that's positive, negative, kind of as we're going through. The next section of the report talks about local sources. So it is all the other revenue that starts with a 1. So you can see like tuition is 1310. All the numbers that start with 1, except for those included in the state school fund formula, are local revenue here. Some of these are estimates. Again, you budgeted $1,038,000. You're looking at bringing in $1.2 million. So these are up a little bit. And in the big scheme of things, $200,000 a drop in the bucket. That's pretty darn close for me. You have other sources called intermediate sources. These all start with a 2. As you're looking at it, these numbers are all going to make sense one of these years for you, I promise. And again, these are fairly close. You have a little bit here, a little bit there. The majority of these comes as a transit payment from Willamette ESD. Oops, I'm getting click happy here, sorry. This is where you're going to see the biggest discrepancy in your revenue is in your other state and federal sources. And if you look under ESSER 3, there is $625,000 budgeted there when you're really only going to get $65,000. So that's a big one. High cost disability is, so that is the report that we file with ODE. So for students who have high cost educational plans that over $30,000, $35,000, 30, you get to submit a report, and if the dollars that are over $30,000, you get to claim. All of that goes into a pot of money though, and it depends on how many other districts and what they spent statewide. And so sometimes we've been as high as 60 cents on the dollar getting reimbursed for that. We're going to be closer to 40 cents on the dollar this year. And so that projection could have been right on, but it depends on what everybody else does statewide. And Little Silver Falls here, I don't like to say little, but you guys are a bit kind of a little drop in the bucket compared to statewide ADMR, and everybody else gets a bigger chunk of the pie.
So Jackie, on that one, this was one of the 2 things pointed out to us in our last time we talked about the budget. this one really bothered me, this shortfall of $600,000 for this program. Because does the state not aware that we're not going to turn these kids away? So like, but at the same time, if we're trying to get back to say that a certain group or of individuals is costing the district $600,000, that really makes me mad. That we're in a situation that, of course, kids need to come here, but the state's not going to backfill. Were we overbilling, or?
So I would never say that you're overbilling. It goes back to what is wrote on their IEP, their individual education plan. So if I am a student who needs a one-on-one aid for assistance, and maybe I need nursing, and I also require OT and PT services, and on top of that I have an SLP. All of those are part of my educational plan, and you can't not provide them.
Yeah.
But it is a number that you will not, I don't think it will ever be 100% at this rate that we're going. And so that is something that we are planning for, we're looking at. It's part of our, this is a great thing to get behind your legislators and talk,
Yeah.
This is where we need more state school fund money, and here's a great example why. We have a student that cost $100,000 and we received reimbursement over $30,000 for this, which only made a little, so
Yeah, that's
examples, individual stories really help tell the story.
Well, it's not the fault of the child, what they were born with, or the families. Like, so this one, I really hope that this message goes to the state, particularly for these particular students. And I hope that across the state that they get that message.
Yeah.
I do, so, sorry for my soapbox, that one.
Are you seeing the same issue in other districts as well? I know you mentioned it kind of just depended on the size of the district, how much they
Well,
get.
when we know that we're getting only about 40% reimbursement, that means costs are up just statewide because everybody's submitting more costs. And there's a set pot of money to distribute for this.
Okay.
So then would you say it's important that we keep the number for what it actually is, so we show the disparity of what is needed and what the state's not providing? Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
That's a good question.
It's a great question. I would say you're tracking all that data because you're submitting that report, so you already have what that number is. And I'm going to budget as close as I can because I want to make sure that I'm getting that revenue that I know I'm going to have. I never want to purposely overinflate it because then I know I have to say, okay, I budgeted $2 million even though I know I'm only going to receive $1 million. And now here in my budget is this fake expenditure line that matches this that we're not going to spend. So it's always that if I over budget here, I have to make sure that I have an expenditure to match and also know that that's where I'm going to cut if I don't get it. It's a little bit of a game.
Jackie,
and how to budget for it.
You've mentioned on the ESSER, and I think I'm missing something. How do we at budget time put in 625 and end up with 65? Wouldn't we have known that we've gotten all our, other than 65, wouldn't we have known we've gotten all our money by that time?
You may not have had all of your reimbursements yet, and I don't know.
Okay.
That's the level of detail I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't, I really tried to just pull the data that I could access without going and doing
Sorry to ask an
interviews.
unfair
No, that's
one.
all right. I just don't have that data for you. I'm sorry.
Okay.
The why behind a lot of those in that first column is hard to determine, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
The bottom part of your revenue page shows the beginning fund balance, and I just wanted to show that you budgeted $1.5 million. That's really what you were planning on, but you did only get that $738,000.
And that was reported to us in November.
Yes. So a quick summary of all those different sections on your revenue. Some are positive, some are negative, but when we get down to it, you are under budget by $2 million in revenue. So you budgeted 53 and you're only getting about 51 at this time, at this date, at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
So if we look at expenditures, and again, this next page on your report, if you're looking at it, is a lot of numbers on here. but what it does is it breaks up all of your expenditures by function. The top section is instruction. So instruction, if I'm looking at instruction versus support services, instruction is everything that is going on in the classroom. These are your classroom teachers. These are the people in the classrooms helping. These are all those costs where when we look at support services, that's everything else around the district that is supporting all of the teachers and students in those classrooms. The piece that I want to highlight on here for you, when I said this wasn't a one-person problem, this isn't a one-school problem, this is a district problem, in that this many yellow numbers are on here. So every single line item that is over budget, I highlighted for you. And this is in instruction only. You are $2.7 million over budget. And you can't buy $2.7 million in pencils in a classroom. You can, but you wouldn't have a school gym probably be full of pencils. So really this gets to that story about staffing versus students and where those costs are, because 75% of your budget is staffing. The next two slides go through all of the support services. And so this, again, has a number of areas that are highlighted in yellow that are over budgeted. And as you go through these and looking at all of them, the one that I updated, which is not that one, an encumbrance that was not included that I've put on here is in your transfers. You are going to have to do, as part of your supplemental budget process, you need to give yourselves authority for another $500,000 in transfers. There are some funds like the food service fund, and there's a debt service fund, a payment that we just need to transfer money to other funds in order to start bringing those balances up. And so while that's not currently encumbered, that is one of the recommendations in my supplemental budget process, which goes through in telling the story about your revenue and your expenditures. When you look at it, it gets us to that $4 million. Your expenditures are over, your revenue is under, and you have a hole. And again, this is fund balance because this is everything that we are saying happens during the fiscal year, even though it may not happen between July 1 and June 30.
Jackie,
Yes.
the $938,000 under contingency, what is that? Is that like a savings account within a savings account?
So contingency is money that is reserved. That's supposed to be your planned savings of what you would only touch in case of an emergency, and it would take board authority to touch that money.
Okay.
You will be using all of that money this year.
Now, this is a question that I have that it's interesting. The reserve balance, do other districts, do they ever put money into a savings account and not just leave it in their general fund?
Yeah.
As I do that personally, so I don't touch it, because I know that I'm gonna need it for taxes, quarterlies, whatnot.
So I would say a savings account is kind of your contingency. Where we talk about different savings for different times, we may move to a different fund. So for example, in many districts that I work with, there is a planned transfer every year to a 400 fund, a facilities fund, that we are saving up for a unplanned construction project, or the roof blows off and we need to fix the roof, or we had a leak in the classroom. Whatever it is, you have money set aside in facilities without having to touch your general fund. And it's easier to plan because every year I make a $50,000 transfer.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden we have a project and we had $600,000 sitting there. We didn't have to touch our contingency, our general fund. Those are some of the areas you could look at. There's a number of different ways of doing that. But it's planned, it is dedicated, it's communicated with your community. It's not like you're creating a savings account and putting it in your back pocket where nobody can see it. There's a plan of, I'm saving this money, and here's our purpose, and here's where it's at. The next slide, I talk about budget appropriations. And so this is important for me because this is your authority. This is your legal responsibility as a board, in that you authorize the spending limits. They're determined through the budget process, and they're for a set period of time. So I can't change my budget authority after June 30th. So if we have to do a supplemental budget, it has to happen before June 30th because I can't do it in July. It's past that time period. So there's a very specific time frame that you have to do. The last page of this financial report that I gave you guys is a summary of your budget appropriations. And this takes a look at you set your appropriations by fund, and within the fund, by instruction. So we talked about, or by function, excuse me. So we talked about these categories already: instruction, support services, community. These are all the ones that were on that last expenditure page. And this is what you gave as the total budget authority. And this is where I could say every month, I want to know, am I over or under our legal authority? Because if I go over that, that is an automatic write-up in our audit. And I really don't like write-ups in the audit. Although it happens, we all make mistakes. That's one that I try to avoid. So if we're watching this to see where we are year to date and what our encumbrances are, as soon as I see that number going over, I'm talking to the board and I'm saying, I'm over appropriation on this. We know that we're going to be over appropriated. I'd like to wait to see if we have a supplemental budget that we need to do, or if we can just do it through a budget authority, a resolution transfer. There's a number of ways to handle them depending on the limit, but this is what we should be looking at. So if you see a number that goes negative when you're reviewing your budget appropriations, if it's not brought to your attention as to why, you should be asking, why are we over budget and what is our plan to fix that? And so this walks you through the general fund. Then you have your special revenue funds. We are over in support services at this time. You have plenty authority in your PERS bond, but that payments in June are not encumbered. So those are something, when I look at this report, then I also know, like, you know what, we're going to pay millions of dollars out in June out of our PERS debt account, and it's not encumbered in here. So what should that number be? What should I be planning? Am I under this? So these are ways I would go back and adjust this report for future months.
Can you explain encumbered for everybody?
Yes, encumbered means I've put on a purchase order and I know it's a planned expense. The worst expenses for me are unplanned and they're not encumbered. So if you just went out and put $5,000 on your P card and it doesn't happen, doesn't get put on the statement until next month, and then it gets turned into me in the business office and it's 4 weeks later before I see it, and I haven't been planning on that expense and now I've authorized those funds to be used in other ways, surprise, you may be over budget. So encumbers is saying, I'm planning on spending the money, here's the account code I'm using, and here's the amount I plan on spending.
Thank you.
The last section on here were the internal service funds and your trust and agency funds. These are your charter areas, your charter schools are accounted for in trust and agency. When I see numbers like this, I can transfer budget authority, and so we would bring a resolution and we would say, I need to decrease instruction and increase support services. They're not overspending their budget, but they may be spending it in different ways than we had planned last year. So these are ways that we can make adjustments throughout the year and talk about what those plans are without being out of budget compliance. Questions on current year revenue and expenditures before we go into cash flow? All right, so you guys were presented a cash flow in March. I think it was March. I don't know what month we're in anymore. Days have all been running together. You have seen a cash flow and a projection about what you may need to borrow in order to cover your cash flow shortage. I was able to get really close and come up with about the same number. But for next year, I updated my cash flow to say, if you make no changes, what's this going to look like? So if you were to compare this, and they don't look at it in fiscal year because they want to see, where are you at in June? Because they want to know, do you need money in June or do you need money in October? They're trying to see where this is. So they're looking at June to May, not July through June. So the fiscal year 23-24 is very similar to where you were previously. On my next page that I'm showing you, if you don't make any changes, and you continue spending at the rates that you're spending, and your loan, depending on the amount that you're approved for, and I think it's going to be somewhere between $3.3 and $3.8 million, plus you have your fees that you're going to pay on top of that, and then you're going to pay interest on that. So I have put in here a $4 million. So if you were able to get the maximum amount of $3.8 million, you probably have about $200,000 in extra expenses. So you need to plan for a $4 million payment that has to basically, that money has to be paid back before next December. December 2024 is your deadline. This shows that you're not only going to be short in cash in June, that you're going to be short in cash in October, and that you are basically going to run out of cash by next February if you make no projections. So this is not the numbers that I am saying are going to happen. This is if you don't make any changes, this is where you're going to be. So these are the ongoing, this is the and then and now here we are at a critical point in time that you have to have cash in the bank, and you have pretty much used everything that you have.
Jackie, when does the school district receive its payments from the state?
For the state school fund?
Yeah, is it every month or is it quarterly?
So we get payments 11 months out of the year. So we get 2 payments in July. So that's where we get extra flow of money to start the school year. And then we get 1 payment, basically the rest of it, 1/12 of it is paid every month from August through May. We get no payments in June. The other thing that happens in May is the adjustment for the prior year state school fund. So some districts get a positive adjustment for the prior year. Some districts, they actually take money back away from you, that you were overpaid the prior year and you get money taken away the current year.
So that could be like a true-up based on attendance or something like that?
Based on the ADM.
Based on all your ADM, based on your revenue, based on your expenditure, based on teacher experience, based on transportation. So all of those pieces come into it. It takes a full year for all of those reports to be done, reconciled, and then trued up. So at this time, we're projecting a positive May payment, but that could change because those estimates have not been released, and the data that I have to look at is your data and your data only. I don't have the other 196 school districts to know how close that they got. So these are not hard numbers. It just gives you a number to look at and kind of think about as you're moving forward and making plans. So for 24-25, you are looking at reductions. You have to make up the overage to make sure that your expenditures are matching your projected revenue. I think that's going to be about a $3 million difference. I've put that $4 million repayment of the TAN on there just as a placeholder. If that goes down, it would be less. If it goes up, it could be more. That's just a placeholder right now. You have to create a contingency. You have to have funds that you don't spend, and that has to be held. And so $1 million was the minimum that Dr. and Joe and I talked about, and it's going to be hard to even make that happen for you. You also are going to have an increase in your PERS bond rates. Those rates are paid off of a percentage of salary in order to make sure that you are guaranteed your debt service payment. As you are looking at potential staffing reductions, as you reduce staff, you have less payroll, which means the rates have to go up in order to pay that debt service. Based on the number of employees and what that percentage is, 300,000 may be low, it may be high. I don't have that exact number. You're also going to have an increased cost in unemployment as you potentially lay staff off. And so your minimum reductions for 24-25 at this point that I'm recommending is $8.8 million, which is a huge pill to swallow. And it needs to be out there now because you guys need to know where you're going for next year, not just what needs to happen for this year.
So I am clear. We're going to take our $53 million operating budget and take it to 45.
Correct. You're going to show in there $4 million. You're going to take that $53 million and it's going to be divided up differently. Yeah. A chunk of it is going to go to loan. A chunk of it is going to go to your contingency. And some of it's going to look like it's increasing your salaries and benefits, because your increased PERS bond rates and your increased unemployment, those are going to be paid as a percentage through payroll. But the overall impact to your district is going to feel like an $8.8 million reduction. As I've gone through this, I am not an administrator here. I am not an employee here. I'm here to do this analysis for you, and these would be my recommendations for you as an outsider looking to see where you need to go. One, you have to approve your TAN. You don't have an option of not borrowing that money. The amount that whatever Piper Sandler can calculate to give you as part of that process, you need to say okay and take that money and approve that. You need to approve a supplemental budget for 23-24. We are going to recognize that revenue through the TANs process. We are going to reappropriate your funds to make sure that your budget authority is within balance, and because the amount is over 10% of each one of those categories, we have to do a supplemental budget process. We are probably going to wait until June to do that. Some of these things are going to get pushed to the very last minute, because we need to make sure that we are accounting for every change that is made and where things are going to go. You need to implement a hiring and spending freeze across all programs for the remainder of the year. My recommendation would be that you work on cutting $1.2 million out of your general fund operating costs this year, and I know that is even worse to hear than the 8.8, because you now have part of April, all of May, and a little bit of June to make that happen, and that's a big number. But if you don't make reductions now, the impact to next year is just going to be compounded and be turned larger. And my recommendation is that you're going to adopt a budget for next year that is $8.8 million in expenditures allocated to other things that are not currently being expensed out of your current budget. As part of the budget process, my recommendation to Kim was to push that out as far as possible. We need to know what some of the changes are that you guys are going to make now. I don't have what those were. I don't know what your TAN is going to be, and all of those come into play. The details of the budget might be more vague than they have been in the past. And what the important thing is that you guys have to have a approved, adopted budget before June 30. You will not be done working on the budget on June 30. You're going to schedule some meetings afterwards, and you're going to continue to work, and you may come back and do a supplemental budget to make sure that everything is done, but you have to make sure that you have the budget authority to spend that money on July 1. And I know I've thrown a lot of information and a lot of numbers at you tonight. There's lots of other things that we can talk about, but I think this was probably what I figured the limit was going to be for tonight on what you could take in. I'm happy to come back in the future at the request of Kim or Dr. Joe to help or present information, whatever you may need. Did you guys have any other questions?
Well, Jackie, I just want to say a huge thank you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your efforts and what you've done for us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Jackie.
Very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have questions since you're here and for the board. I'm a little confused on timeline now. Like, you know, we got to reduce the budget the remainder of the year by 1.2 by your recommendations. How are we talking about that? Who's recommending it? I'm really confused.
I think it's
I know
probably-
we got a bunch of people in the room too that they just got bad news but doesn't know what it means.
Yeah,
I don't know what it means. Like, what's going on?
Dr. Morlock, you want to address that?
Sure. It's my job to bring you a plan to show you how we might do some of these things. You know, we'll work on the 1.2. It's a recommendation. Everything that we save this year, we don't have to take out of next year. But I have meetings with all of our administrators tomorrow. I have meetings with both of our associations, our classified and our licensed folks, on Wednesday. And they are work sessions to start thinking about some ideas and some opportunities to do it. This won't be easy, and the things that we bring are not going to be things that anyone will like, but we're going to try to work together with our groups to figure out what we can do this year to plan for next year. But that's part of the job that I'm here is to try to figure out what kinds of things we can bring you to get you to that place. As far as pushing the budget calendar back, we're going to need more time to figure out to get this forward. So we won't have as detailed a thing, but we're looking for the authority, but we need to figure out where we're going to get, how we're going to put away 8.8, you know, where that comes from, what that looks like, the restructuring. There's a huge amount of work to do between then and now, and so that's why we'll have to push that back. We may have to have multiple night meetings to get it done, because I think part of this also is the education piece, so you can understand more, so you understand which questions you should be asking. So you saw the reports that Jackie showed you earlier tonight. We put those into our system already here, so you'll be able to get those reports and just start that process now. But there's a lot of work to figure out where to get just that beginning part, and we don't want to. We'll bring that plan to you as soon as we can. I think we'll also be talking about scheduling a meeting to approve a TAN, so we can make it to the end of the year, so we can make sure we pay people, and we need that very soon. We're still waiting on the final piece from Piper Sandler to get that, but.
I've got an additional question, and Jackie, thank you for the time putting this in. It was very helpful. I think pretty stark, eye-opening. My question is, I want to say this correctly. Last year we settled a couple contracts that everyone was in favor of pushing that forward. And as I look at the revenue and expenditures, even if the budget came in, or the expected revenue came in on mark, we're still overspending at $3 million. Did we, with some of those contracts, are you seeing any information that we maybe overpromised with the increased staff costs? Looking at the other chart, 75% of our costs are associated to staff. Did we miss the mark there?
Can I add something to that too? In our meeting, because I got a chance to preview this on the last Thursday, and in that conversation we did talk about, and this is a hard question. We had 25 teachers that we hired that were not budgeted for. And
that was overall staff, and it was across all funds.
Okay.
And so there were increases. A lot of those were identified, that there were grant funds that covered those. And so we didn't put those specific ones in here because it did get a little confusing with individual funds and looking at what had money to spend on those and what didn't.
Okay. So
but staffing overall is higher. It wasn't just licensed staff though. It was all staff.
All staff.
Yes.
Okay. So I think that your question is like, with the contract, there's a rate that we approved for all sorts of things, salary, benefits, and you're asking, was that, is that contributing? And the question that I'm asking is the number of units that we have to calculate that rate by. Is that the problem? And so
kind of a two-part question, I guess.
Yeah, so that's why I wanted to add
great.
on to that.
So I think when we go into contract negotiations, it is always extremely hard to say, how do we project out what this is going to cost us, not just this year, but next year and the following year? Because you're all teachers for me this year. You leave partway through the year. You stay for 2 years, leave the third year. You're here, you left and then came back, and then you got put on a different salary schedule because you were doing a different job. And so there's so many changes. We make those estimates on the staffing that we have right now, not we're hiring more staff. That's not part of it. And the people are going to be different. And so it's really hard to look at that to say, were all of my teachers or all of my classified staff exactly the same? Did they work the same hours? Or were they 7.5 and I increased a little bit of time because we needed it, and now they were 8? Now they qualified for additional benefits that they may not have had before. Some of that is, I would say, contracts always make our costs go up, right? But we try to build those into the budget, and I don't know, and I didn't do an analysis on this because I don't know when your contracts were approved in relation to the budget, and so what numbers were used in there.
Okay. Thank you. And part of the reason is asking because at some point in the future we'll be at contract negotiations again, and so if that's a part, I just want to be able to learn as we move forward.
To me, it seems like making sure that we have that 5 to 8% in reserves is going to be a key part of that, because when we went into negotiations, we knew that we were we were running really, really low on reserves. And so I think that that's part of our issue, that we're here, you know, and so we have to build those reserves back up in order to, you know, because I think our unions knew that we said that we cannot do any more here, and they respected that, because you could see that we don't have a lot of reserves. But I think that's our job, is to make sure that we get those built back up so that we don't get ourselves in this situation again.
And they didn't, I mean, I don't, you know, they were budgeting or bargaining on a number that wasn't real. You know, the numbers that both parties were bargaining on at that time, those were not essentially factual numbers. We were at that, I mean, am I incorrect there, Jackie, that when we were at that table, that what we said we actually had in our general fund, in our reserves, is actually not the truth?
Well, if we looked at last year and you were planning on $1.5 million, you really ended with 736. So you had half of what you thought you had.
Yeah, so that's a problem. And it wouldn't have been quite as big of a problem had we had our reserves built up. We could have cushioned it. That's what the reserves are for, is to cushion those kinds of things.
It strikes me that every part of school finance is a projection based on somebody else's estimate. It's just a huge house of cards. It's a very difficult multifactorial problem, and like you said, having that really your safety net against that is having a significant reserve.
Right, and the difficulty is you're actually operating in 3 budgets at all times, right? Because there's still a reconciliation of, we're still talking about 22, 23. And so we have to think about having a little bit of a cushion is important, because it could be that we have to write a check because now we're over, or it could be under. And if you have $700,000 and you're writing an $800,000 check, that's going to be rubber and it's not going to come back, right? So we have to think about those. But when it comes to also building budgets, when you're estimating your budget and you've not finalized a contract, you have to make an estimate of what you think your COLA and benefits will be. And I think it's important that when you make an agreement, you follow the agreement, but you may have to make an adjustment in your budget on what you spend, right? So if you say, here's what we have appropriated, well, if more goes into a certain part of it, then fewer goes into another part of it. But it is important to remember that when you bargain and you make an agreement, you have an agreement. So then you may have to come back and adjust your budget and say, okay, so can we afford this part or that, or do we have fewer people that are going to do it or more? So, you know, I think we can talk about those things, but I think it's important to remember that when you finalize an agreement, then you have to readjust your budget. So I expected a 0.5%, but now it's costing me 2%. So now I have to come back and readjust what I've got in there, and I may have to make other adjustments. And that's just part of that process. But, you know, it's important that we keep in mind that we make agreements, we have to pay for them, and we have to figure out where we are on that. And you're right, it is projections on projections, which makes it really scary to not have an ending fund balance, which is why in tonight's recommendations, $1 million is the minimum, which already, you know, makes me a little nervous, but we also have so many other things to reduce at this time, so you have to build that up, you know, and get to that target somewhere at the, you know, 5 to 7 million to have in the bank at some point.
And the tool that Jackie has helped us with is going to show us the budget versus the actuals, and that's the part that we need to be looking at, or making sure that that's being attended to on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Other questions?
I just want to also thank Kim and, was it Linda?
Mm-hmm.
I know that you guys worked throughout the weekend on this, and you worked your butts off, so thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to leave this.
That's
I'm
his.
giving it to you.
Yeah.
I remember.
Thank you, Jackie.
All right, so we are going to, we're still talking about the TAN? Maybe not. It's a separate item on the agenda.
It's on there.
I'm just gonna, hey Kim, are we gonna still talk about the TAN?
So yes, in regard to the TAN, with the information provided tonight, it would probably be my recommendation that we absorb a lot of this new information, and we do have until April 15th to get a resolution. I would like to make a suggestion that the board consider a meeting later this week to consider the resolution for the TAN. We are awaiting a updated analysis from Piper Sandler based on the updated cash flow projection that Jackie had prepared. So we do anticipate seeing that very shortly. So that would be our recommendation at this time, I believe, for the board to consider.
So looking at the availability of everybody, it seems like Thursday is the day that fits
As long
us.
as it's early enough, I've got a fire board meeting at 8.
Okay, so you think you can attend if we do it earlier in the evening? So 8 o'clock is your,
Yeah.
okay. So let's count on a Thursday meeting then, and I'm not sure what the time will be. We'll consult with staff and get back to everybody. And as I mentioned, I think I sent a message to you guys on Thursday or Friday. We should anticipate meeting more often and being flexible around those meetings so that we can keep things moving as quickly as we can.
Sorry, just one follow-up question. How much time, once we authorize or not authorize, do you need to turn around to make sure we don't miss a deadline? If it's due April 15th, I just want to make sure whenever we set that meeting.
Yes, your resolution would need to take place before 5 o'clock on April 5th. I'd say even before 4 o'clock, April 15th. So as long as we have the resolution, that will meet the timeline.
So we would need to meet this week then?
Okay. Yes. So the recommendation is that the resolution is completed this calendar week, please. Yes.
And so that gives us time to absorb the message tonight from Jackie and get feedback from community members via email or tonight during public comment. All right, I think, so that's the end of your report, Kim, right?
Yes, thank you. The additional financial reports that have been provided the last couple of months are available on Board Book along with our enrollment report. However, Jackie has shared with us the report matrix, if you will, into our system. So this very detailed report will become your new normal. I absolutely love it, and you will be receiving that more often than you need, but we are making that commitment to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay, so now we amended the agenda to give SFEA their comment time. So SFEA, we are ready for you.
Last Wednesday, we had the pleasure to meet with Dr. Borlaug to get to know him and to learn what will happen under his leadership. We're so very thankful for the collaboration and the transparency that was practiced in the last week. We are also extremely thankful for the people that have volunteered their time to help bring some of the answers to this financial mess. A lot of feelings come to mind after watching this presentation. We're angry, we're confused, and disillusioned by the people that should have prevented this from happening. In the coming days, the executive team will work tirelessly with district leadership, keeping our members informed, and collecting their feedback, all this while ensuring that we can still maintain the high quality of education that all of our students deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, SFEA. We're going to move now into our regular public comment section. We're glad you're here and welcome you to address the board with your ideas, concerns, or compliments. Please keep the following in mind. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand to be recognized by the board chair. If attending remotely, please use the raise hand feature within Zoom. For the record, please provide your name and relationship to the district. Please keep individual remarks to 3 minutes. If speaking as a representative on behalf of a group of 3 or more, comment time will be extended to 5 minutes. A second public comment period will occur later in the meeting that is specific to discussion and action items only. The board will not hear complaints against individual district staff or board members during public comment. Please understand that the board's primary role is to listen, and you likely will not receive an immediate response. Finally, remember, we all model the way for our students and ask that you share your thoughts respectfully and in accordance with the Silver Falls School District Board Decorum Agreement. With that, is there somebody who would, in the audience, who would like to address the board? Yeah, I do. Okay, come on forward. I'm going to ask you just a few questions first. I'm going to ask you your name and your relationship to the district. Yep. And the topic that you're speaking on, and if you are representing just yourself or a group.
My name is Paul Scoville. I have a son who goes to Robert Frost. I'm also the lead cook at Robert Frost, and I am also the secretary of the union. I am here for me as a dad in this district.
So we're going to give you 3 minutes, and Aaron will warn you when there's 30 seconds.
Right on. I'll be honest, I didn't come to speak tonight. I came to listen. And it's your very comments that inspired me to speak, so I'm going to address them. Not trying to make a personal attack, just responding to what you said. To the person who said, we trust the professionals, look where that got me. I wish I would have pushed harder a little more. Yeah, because I might be in the welfare line next month. My mom taught me we fight the fights that are worth fighting. We don't always fight the fights we think we can win. Your job is to fight for me and fight for my kid. You did neither. How much time has it taken to figure all this out? How much time have people cried at night because they don't know if they're going to have a job next month? How much time have people worried about this, cried in my kitchen at Robert Frost because they don't know what's going on? How much time have you cost people already? Heartache and grief. And I'm going to end it with this, and you're going to think I'm being sarcastic, but I swear to God, I'm being dead honest. Here in this very building, they teach business. They teach budgets, and they teach you how to do it. I recommend each and every one of you that I am making contact with, which is all of you, take the time to learn. This is not a job where you learn on the job. Take me up on that. There's 1,000 awesome teachers here, all over, that will teach you how to do this. Every suggestion given tonight was a remedial suggestion. Unacceptable. You guys are messing with people's lives. Unacceptable. There's consequences for me. There's consequences for my family, and there's consequences for my son. What consequences do you face? Serious. You are messing with people's lives. Act like it. That's all I got to say.
We traditionally check to see if there's anybody online. Is there anybody with their hand up?
No hands raised online.
All right, I see a hand right there. Come on forward. Hi there, I'm going to ask you the same question. So name, relationship to the district, your topic, and then if you're speaking for yourself or a group.
My name is Mike Halbert. I'm a class of 70 graduate. I speak for myself, and I want to talk a little bit about the budget. Now, I realize a lot of people are upset. I realize you guys have had a real hard couple weeks. But this too shall pass. Now, we talked, and Tom had suggested originally, you know, a lot of this I think kind of plays into the bond you guys were going for. Because, but there are ways out of this. You know, this is not a dire situation. You're going to get your tax anticipation note. You're going to have money to pay the bills, in my estimation. Not a big deal. When it comes to November, do the right thing and go for an operating levy. The community will support you. You can fix the schools, you can save my high school, and everybody will live to fight another day. So that's what I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody online? Nope. Okay, another person want to come up? Come forward, please. Yep, thank you.
My name is Sandy Braden. I live in the city. I had 2 kids that went through school, and I have 3 kids, grandkids, excuse me, currently in the system. I want to address the budget.
And are you going to speak just for yourself?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so we're going to give you 3 minutes for that.
Oh, okay. First of all, it's also the superintendent's responsibility to maintain a balanced budget, and he failed miserably. In my opinion, I don't know why he resigned, but I don't think that should be forgotten in this whole scenario. I did read some of the material that I could find online, which was not easy to find, I will tell you. I did read the audit reports, and for the last several years, I really appreciate what Jackie said, because those were on my notes. You were overspending, and so this is not news. It's been compiling and adding up. At some time, you know, the train was going to wreck, and unfortunately it is now. The $8.8 million is huge in my opinion. It's not something that's going to go away overnight. And I respectfully disagree with the gentleman that appeared before me. Until you can control the current budget and the current situations, you have no business going before taxpayers asking for additional bond money. Because I know that was a sticking point for a lot of people, is the accountability of the finances. And so once you can get this remedied, trust can be regained by the public, then perhaps you could go forward. But until then, speaking for myself, I just don't see how that could happen.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience who'd like to address the board?
All right, good evening. My name is Amin Sabo. I'm a father in the district of a middle schooler and one of those expensive substitutes you were just talking about. I want to talk tonight on behalf of a very small group, but we want to talk to you about trust, leadership, and accountability.
So we're going to give you a group of 3 or more?
It is.
Okay, we're going to give you 5 minutes.
Thank you. So tonight has been both eye-opening and even more concerning. I agree with some of the comments that the board members adds to the concern. Good leaders are tough and hard to come by, but good leaders know that everything that does and does not happen under their watch is their fault. So you are our leaders. As an Inspector General for the Oregon Military Department, I spent years investigating fraud, waste, and abuse. It's very easy to always go and say, "Oh, it's fraud." Not one investigation I ever ran was somebody taking a bunch of money and running for the border. Doesn't happen. In fact, it's usually just a systemic system of failures. Leaders in key positions, trusted positions, with the authority and supposed to have the knowledge to prevent loss. Usually these leaders are undertrained, complacent, or too scared to speak up. I believe that's what we have here. It's been said tonight that I wish I had done more in November. I wish I had done more when we found this out a few months ago. And it's also been rightly said that you have overspent repeatedly. Many of you are not new to this. There is absolutely no excuse for this. This is complacency. This is a lack of accountability. This is failure to dig deep and ask tough questions of staff. Transparency is everything. The hardest part of being a leader in any organization is accepting your own failure. Not because of ill intent, not because of fraud, not because you're a bad person, but in spite of all your hard work, in spite of all your dedication, in spite of your commitment to your, I almost said troops, to your students, In spite of all the reasons many of you most likely ran for office, you failed. Looking yourself in the mirror as a leader, it's tough. What's even tougher is accepting that you have to step aside. That in spite of all your efforts, all your hard work, and all your dedication to students, teachers, and parents, you have failed on a no-fail mission. And that requires, as a leader, it's tough. I've had to do it. Looking yourself in the mirror and asking yourself that hard question, and I'm asking each of you to do it tonight. Can you do this job? Do you have the trust and confidence of the public, the Teachers Association behind me, the staff, and the students to move the ball forward? I would submit to you, our group would submit to you, that trust in this district, trust between the teachers and this board, trust between the students and the board, trust between the parents and the board, and just everyday community members in this board cannot be reestablished with this board in its current form. I implore all of you, go home, look yourselves in the mirror, and ask yourself, are you possessing the leadership capabilities, the leadership foresight, and the leadership integrity to move this district forward? And if you're distracted by outside agencies, outside commitments to jobs and everything, that's okay. We all are. But I implore you to step aside and let somebody else do the job if you can't answer yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else online? Anybody else in the audience wish to address the board? Come forward, please.
Okay. My name is Tammy Madison. I'm a library media assistant, but actually I'm a full librarian at Robert Frost. And I'm also a part of the union. And I just want you to know that, okay, my heart is feeling that layoffs, furloughs, all of that stuff that could possibly happen because of this mistake, that was not our fault. It was not classified staff's fault. I want you to know that every single one of us put our whole lives into this job. I put more hours on weekends and evenings. I'm not a certified teacher that gets paid a whole lot more, a whole lot of money. I'm a classified staff person that gets paid hourly. And I'm told that I can't help at kindergarten roundup because they don't want to pay me. I volunteer to do that now because I want to meet the students that come in. I want to be the person that fundraises for our school. We do the readathon, we do book fairs. So I put in extra time, and I want you to know that every single one of us does that, even the teachers. I want you to be really, really, really careful on taking away those people that put their heart and soul into this district, into our students. It is our life. It is not just the money. Because I would do this job for free. Because I love these students. And I love my job. And I love what I do. Please, please, I'm begging you on behalf of all classified staff and teachers, please do your best to not just make us pay for this mistake. This is not our fault. We were told, if any of us have a budget, we were told, this is okay for you to spend. We don't get a choice on the budget. It's our principals and admin at DO. They are supposed to be in control of that. But now, when all of this extra, we don't know this. We don't have any say in any of this, but we are gonna have to pay the price. I just want you to really think about that because every single one of us put our whole life into this job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else?
We do have one online.
Oh, okay.
Daniel, can you promote Garen to panelist?
Hi, Garen. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Very faintly.
Okay, I'll try to speak loudly. Is that better?
That is better.
Okay, thank you. I appreciated hearing the senior board members tonight apologizing for the lack of oversight. The excuse that I was focused on the bond seems to me to be disingenuous. Our community deserves and can expect a board that can handle a bond and not run the district 10 million in the red. There are some other reasons why that excuse rings hollow to me. First and foremost, there was widespread and intense dissatisfaction with district leadership long before this was announced. The deficit was announced and the board was not willing to act on it and instead gave the superintendent glowing reviews, like his evaluation last year, which was nearly perfect somehow. He also seemed to get unquestioning and unwavering support. Before I go any farther, I want to say that this applies to the 4, I guess, senior board members and not the 3 newer board members. I do have some specific questions for the board. I am aware that board leadership, Jennifer Traeger and Aaron Cook, would at times play the role of maybe enforcer.
Hey, Garen.
Board members who would ask questions.
Garen, I need to stop you for a second.
I have some specific questions.
Garen.
I think, Jennifer, that it's addressed. And I have specific instances which I don't need.
I need to stop you because our board policy
Leadership was widespread. Well, your board policy got us into this mess, so I'll move on from that. Dissatisfaction with district leadership was widespread. I saw the results of that at Central Howell and Robert Frost when I worked there. I sat through the inexplicably bogus and expensive edX sessions, and an SFEA survey taken before this was announced showed something like 96% of teachers didn't support district leadership. The only people I ever knew that did was the board. I also would like to know, why was it the policy of the board to forward complaints directly to the superintendent? How, if you do continue to serve, will you ensure that you are independent of a superintendent and get outside information and not just hear from the superintendent? And also, I have heard, and I think it is verified, that a board member was renting a home to the superintendent, and I'm just wondering how that didn't violate some sort of ethics policy, and if the board would be willing to consider putting an ethics policy in place to prevent any financial conflicts of interest in the future. Thank you for your time and good luck. And my thoughts and prayers to the teachers, students, and staff who are in this mess that didn't cause it.
Thank you, Garen. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak? All right. Oh, go ahead, Sheldon.
Good evening. Sheldon Sear, teacher at the middle school, but I'm here speaking as just a dad. I don't envy any of you this evening, and in the same way, I'm not excited to be up here speaking either. I understand that your hands are probably tied by a non-disclosure agreement, but I would encourage each one of you to do what you can to be just as transparent as possible with the community at large about how we got here. I think we got a good deal of it from the financial report, but that's only what happened and not necessarily why, who, and how. So I would encourage just as much transparency as you each can muster to rebuild trust with this community, because it's damaged. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheldon.
2 online.
All right.
Daniel, can you promote Christine Lopez to panelist?
Hello, Christine, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So can you, we know your name, can you tell us your relationship to the district, if you're speaking for a group, and the topic that you're speaking on?
Yes, I'm a special ed teacher at Mark Twain Elementary.
All right, we're gonna get, and you're speaking just for yourself?
I suppose for a few people.
Okay.
There's lots of questions about why a special ed director was pushed out. And we have someone overseeing, not directly overseeing, but has been overseeing SPED and not understanding all that goes into SPED. And I'm wondering why that is, and if there's any answers to that, because that's opening us up for more litigation from families.
Yeah, and Christine, I don't think that we are able to discuss that during the meeting. I do think that our CEO, Dr. Morlock, is probably the best person to follow up on that, and I do think he's working on that issue as right now, currently. So I don't think there's anything else we can say during the meeting about that topic.
Yeah, I also wanted to piggyback off of what the librarian said about how teachers and assistants did not and were not aware of all the spending. We went to our leaders with, we would like to purchase this, and we were told that it was fine to go ahead. I'm going to keep spending until they tell me to stop. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Christine. We appreciate your comments. Is there anybody else in the room who would like to speak before we go to the next online speaker? All right, let's promote the next person then.
Daniel, can you promote Eliza to panelist?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Eliza. Yes, we can.
Hi. I wanted to say thank you to Jackie tonight and Linda. I feel like you guys are coming up with solutions for what feels like a very dire problem. And I feel like it's really important that we all try and handle this as a grown-up issue and keep the kids out of the problem and try to make sure that the students do not feel as much of the burden of this financial loss that we are going to experience over the next year. I encourage you to follow the recommendations of tonight's presentation. And I also want to know, as a parent that's involved in the school district, how we can discuss things with our state representatives in order to be able to work toward better funding for education. This problem is not an SFSD problem alone, and I really feel that it's important that we find some guidance to be able to start steering more funding to education, statewide and nationally. Also, I see that it's an action item for you tonight to for Teacher Appreciation Week. And I just want to speak up to say that as a parent here in the district, I really appreciate our teachers. I appreciate all of our staff, every single teacher and school administrator and office member that I have ever worked with is completely dedicated to supporting students. And I believe that this is a very difficult circumstance to be in, but I do think that if we can try to come together and focus on developing means of tightening our belts a lot, we can come through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Eliza. Anybody else in the room want to address the board? All right, there is a second public comment portion coming up. If you hear the next parts of the discussion and you want to address the board, there is another opportunity. All right, so next we're at number 12, the action items for the superintendent. Oh, no, that's not where we're at. Thank you. We are at 10A, we've done 10B, administrator liaison description. This is the position that we're asking Kevin Palmer, the role, to fill. And I think Aaron and Derek have been working on the description of the position. And so I will turn it over to you guys for you to present what you've come up with.
Yeah, we wanted to, we had been trading ideas as to how to define and keep this position, again, in a defined role, but also keep it fluid and not be pinned down to 2 specific action items here. But Derek and I came up with 5 attributes or roles and responsibilities we'd like to potentially see in this position. And we, again, renamed it kind of the superintendent liaison role. And I'll read through those, even though these are on board book as well. One thing is, the first item is support the superintendent through district level decisions. Next is advising the superintendent through district and community relationships. Next is support the superintendent through financial and budgetary decisions and the possible impact of those decisions. Next item is attend meetings with licensed and classified associations. And the last item would be act as a liaison between the superintendent and our building principals. And so these are at least 5 little items that we came up with. Derek, did you have anything else to add on those?
Just real briefly, we just wanted to provide a little bit of guidance and have someone that Dr. Morlock can lean on, that knows our district, knows the relationships. Again, giving kind of like broad stroke, general guidance, and I'm sure there'll be some navigating of that relationship. But as Aaron mentioned in the conversation, we really felt like this captured kind of the things that, as a board, we had discussed earlier, and I think it's a good outline for moving forward.
Great. So I guess we wanted to, have it presented here tonight at the board meeting, just to in any other input for board members or even staff, if all, based on at least these kind of 5 bullet points that we initially come up with. So we're open to any additions, critiques, tweaks, anything that you see fit.
Just a question. I assume you consulted with both Kevin and with Dr. Morlock about this role?
We ran it by staff, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just a clarification, as far as board members, I'm sure contacting Kevin, because I know that he's going to advise the superintendent. I would imagine that, I plan, I hope it's appropriate, that just to check in with Kevin, see how he's doing, how it's going. I would assume that's appropriate, and he would do that with multiple board members, but I don't know how that would work.
Well, your list is complete because I've already had Kevin doing all these things, so it's been good. He's been invited to these meetings. He's given up a lot of time. I do also want us to remember that he is running a school, so he has a full-time job, and we're asking him to do these things on top. And he's been very gracious with it. He's been to our association meetings. He's got them scheduled. He's been to our pre-meeting on the budget to look over the things. So he is spending a large amount of time. So I would just ask to be really cautious with asking him for additional time, and then we can find time to do that. It's okay to talk to him, of course, but he's also a human being that is running a school and is very busy. So I have appreciated very much having Kevin along for this, and I noticed that the dates you have it through August, so when you transition to a new interim superintendent, you can take the reins and go through some of those conversations that have been had. But it's been great already, and again, he's been gracious with his time, so just be cautious on how much more we put on him, because he is also running a school, and will be going through this process with everybody else, which will be very difficult for him, like it is for every other employee and community member.
I'm glad you brought up the dates too. That it says effective 4/9 through 8/16 of 24, and that adds, like you said, that transition time when we have our interim superintendent in here. That just doesn't end on June 30th, right? That there is some extra time there that Kevin could help, bring our interim superintendent up to speed, and again, just really help act as somebody who could really help tie things together there. So that date was added for specific purpose for that.
Sounds good.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks to Kevin, and he's no longer in the room, is he?
Nope, there he
Hi,
is.
Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it. You don't have to answer every email that I send you. Yeah, and so when like I've been emailing both Dr. Joe and Kevin and Dan as appropriate, and I don't necessarily expect every single person to weigh
Right.
in on that. I just want to make sure that if there is feedback that we receive it. And so I agree that the only concern that I have is just we don't want to overload Kevin. So that's my
Right.
only concern. I think this looks great.
Yep.
So do we have that as an action? We don't have that as an action item. Is that something that we need to approve now? It's just something that we're...
It's already happening.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
as long as we got Kevin to agree to it, we were okay. It's okay.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin. Thanks again.
Yep.
All right, we'll move on next to the superintendent vacancy and timeline. And we started with this with Aaron and Dan, looking at what are the legal obligations that we have to do in order to, work towards hiring an interim superintendent. And so Dan suggested that Aaron watch a video from another school district. He did it. Aaron drafted a list of, these are the steps. Dan took it and added some more things to it. I think we had council look at it. The challenge here is that we are trying to not spend any money on this process. And so Dan put us in contact with Krista Parent from COSA, who is willing to come in and do some of the work. We would have to provide some of the other work that would traditionally come in a search, because we've paid OSBA in the past to run searches. So those are the conversations that have taken place thus far. Also, I think that we have had community members wanting to volunteer time to help this process move forward. Melissa Briggs, who's in the audience, volunteered to help us out with this. She's an attorney and has a background that's very process oriented. And so staff thought that would be a good fit for the work that we need to be done for free. And so we've kind of put together what we think will work in terms of getting the job done, doing it well, and not costing anything. And again, this is another thing that Kevin has volunteered to work together with Melissa on part of the community outreach piece. But basically, we need to make sure that we're following all the legal requirements in order to move forward. So I'll turn it over to Aaron and Dan if they have more to say about the draft of the process that we've got in front of us.
Well, I think it's a fairly short timeline. Number one, it's going to be pretty tight. It starts this evening with number one is declaring the vacancy tonight. And then we'll get into the qualifications or qualities and qualifications process starting tomorrow. and there's going to be a survey from OSBA. Do you want to get into that, Dan?
Yeah, and so there's a slight change to that. Talked to Kevin a little bit today, and he and Melissa met this morning. So that piece there that talks about the OSBA survey will either be the OSBA survey, which they will give us for free, but Melissa and Kevin also talked about having their own survey. So we will land on which one we will use, and then get that out to the community so that we can get that part of the qualities and qualifications process done. So it might be theirs or it might be OSBA's.
I think also after the survey, we've got some ample time, which is nice to have the board, community input. Number one is our community forum, either on April 16th or 17th, led by Kevin and Melissa, and then also a chance for on the April 22nd work session for us to have a board hearing on the qualities and qualifications and inequalities.
So I spoke to OSBA, and that last piece where I added the 22nd board hearing on qualities and qualifications is a requirement. So we will need to add a public session or a public input session on that agenda so that the public can come before the board to speak. So that was a piece that wasn't there previously that we'll need to kind of fold in with the survey, with the community forum they're doing, and then allowing the public to come before you to give input. And that qualities and qualifications piece is the kind of the last piece that you have to adopt before we can, if it's COSA, to go out, post the position, and recruit someone. So you have to announce what those adopted qualities and qualifications are.
I did talk to Krista this morning for about a half hour from COSA, Krista Parent, who is already thinking about, recruiting. So that's the piece that we would get a lot of benefit from her. The OSBA, when we did it before with OSBA, it was basically a listing, and they would just collect and help us through the process, right? Krista is actually actively talking to people who are administrators who would be appropriate for the job. And so she is obviously very well connected in the administrator pool in Oregon, and that's one thing that I really like about the idea of going with COSA. She talked to me about she can come and talk with us on a Zoom to if we need to interview her, we can do that. It would probably be, like an additional meeting, right? But we definitely have the opportunity to do that. And I got a good, for me, there were not red flags with this situation. I think she's really well experienced. She just helped Eugene get their interim in, and she's helping another school district. She's got time. She just needs to hear from us whether we want to take advantage of that. So let me know if you have any other questions about her that I can maybe answer based on the phone call that I had with her, or maybe Dan or Joe can field questions too.
And just what role would COSA play?
They're going to recruit.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Once we have our qualifications, they would recruit. We'd still post it to different methods and everything, but they'd recruit too.
Is that
we would post it, and we would be collecting all of the applications on behalf of COSA, and then working with Krista on the recruitment, and probably giving the materials to her to bring to before the board. That's what I haven't had that conversation specifically with her. That would be my assumption of what she would do, is go out and recruit, have people apply to the district office, give her all the materials to come before the board.
Other questions?
No, I just had the same question as Phil.
Yep.
OSBA offered to give, they've got a pool of candidates as well. I guess there are a lot of maybe the same people.
Ones.
And so, but we can also, they've said they'd gladly, connect us with people, which I think going with COSA would be good. And if there were candidates that OSBA recommended, I would just put them in contact with Krista.
She did ask me a little bit about our board today because that's what candidates want to hear about. And so, you know, I gave her my thoughts about how we work together. And she said that the candidate pool is not deep at all. So actually, she gave me some stats. She said that there have been 154 new superintendents in the last 5 years. In Oregon.
Out of the 197 districts?
Out of 197 districts. And some districts have gone through multiple, right? But in the last 5 years, there have been 154 new superintendents take their superintendency. She says that there are 32 for next year, 32 new ones. So, and you know, she gives me that plus saying that the pool is not that deep. And I actually felt like that during our, you know, Tom and I think, are the only ones still here, have been through 2 searches recently, and I felt like there wasn't a lot of depth in those searches. So that's something that we need to know that we're facing. She has recommended what a lot of people I've talked to recently are recommending, that we get somebody in as an interim that has some business chops, and to get help get the budget in shape for the next person to come as a permanent. Now, we don't have to follow that recommendation. You know, we might get somebody in the interim pool that we think would be really great, that doesn't have that profile, but that's her recommendation. And the recommendation I've heard from several people is to look for somebody who's got experience to come in and help right the ship and make it an more attractive opportunity for the permanent search. Any other questions or thoughts about that? What about the timeline? Are we comfortable with the timeline that's presented?
I don't know that we have a lot of choice.
The only thing I'm concerned is just all the other deadlines we have coming up for the budget. So it's like,
we're gonna have to meet a lot.
Yep.
So sooner you guys, we figure it out, the better, so I can.
Yep, and that's, you know, we don't want to move too quickly. Like, that's why we're not doing the TAN tonight, because that's a pretty big step, and we want to make sure that we have time to process. But you know, we've had several one-issue meetings recently, and I think that we can probably expect more like that in order to get the process moving as quickly as we can.
Yep, we do need you to declare a vacancy tonight, though, so we can get started on
Yes,
it. So
we do.
just keeping you in line. Make sure
Thank
you do next
you.
time.
It's always good because I skip
Okay.
things on the agenda, as you can tell. Okay, so if we are done with that piece, we're gonna open it up for the second public comment. So if you would like to speak during public comment and are attending virtually, use the raise hand feature on Zoom. If you are attending in person, please approach the public comment table located in front of the board. Is there anybody in the room who'd like to approach? Come on forward.
Can I speak twice?
What?
Can I speak again?
Yeah, come on up. Only for 3 minutes.
Yeah, you're not going to hear more than that. You know, my name is Mike Halbert, graduate of Silverton High. I represent my own views. I don't think when I was here before that I really got a chance to thank you guys, because I think you did the best job you could with the information that you had. So, you know, and I realize you're getting a lot of stones thrown at you, but I personally want to thank you. You're human beings. You make mistakes, you fix them. The other thing I wanted to say is, listening to you talk about getting a new superintendent, again, this is my opinion, the superintendent pool in Oregon is really incestuous. There's only a few people. There are good people out there. Find one. I think they're out there, but it's going to take you some time to find them. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody online who'd like to speak to this? Any others in the audience? So Sheila, the same.
Thank you, yes.
Yeah.
My name is Sheila Nielsen. I'm a teacher, also a past parent of students in the school district. So I just have kind of just a question. So I heard some apologies tonight from some of you that you wish you would have known more about the budget issues. Yet it was also stated publicly from some of you that the information was given out publicly on multiple occasions, including the statement tonight we heard the budget was on track, that we knew we needed to make adjustments. We were all aware of that. We'll work on it, but didn't make adjustments. So it's confusing rhetoric. I'm confused. I've sat through a lot of board meetings. I've watched the information that came out many times. And so I think one of the questions that I'd like to know is the who of who was making spending decisions, because that seems like an appropriate question that people in the community, teachers, would like to know.
Thank you. All right,
We do have one online.
Okay.
Daniel, please promote S. Wilson.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, so I'm going to ask you to start with the four questions. Please state your name, your relationship to the district, the topic you're going to speak on, and whether you're speaking just for yourself or for a group.
My name is Scotty Wilson. I represent myself. I have 2 nieces and a nephew in the school system right now.
Okay, we're going to give you 3 minutes, and Aaron's going to give a verbal 30-second warning.
Okay. I'm speaking about the superintendent search process. I just want to encourage that you get as much community feedback as possible, and also consider that the community at large is the largest stakeholder. While it does include teachers and staff, the whole community itself is the largest stakeholder in this, and I think that we should have the largest vote. I do think there is a little bit of a lack of trust with the superintendent election process that has happened in the past. So I do know that you may have executive sessions that you have to do. I do encourage you to keep those at the minimum, because I think we deserve to know what is being said, what is being discussed about the next future superintendent. And as for the type of person, I honestly feel like the type of person would be similar to that the military person who spoke earlier, the one who's going to make decisions, someone who's going to make the hard decisions and not care if someone needs a safe space to go crawl into a corner, someone who's going to make sure that the job is getting done and done correctly, because the superintendent is supposed to be that person that keeps you informed and the community informed. And to be honest, the last one was a joke. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room want to speak to the board? Come forward. You remember the 4 questions?
Yes, I do.
I knew you would.
Kirsten Barnes, Silverton High School. I'm a CTE department coordinator, and I'm representing the CTE department just quickly. So I think just a reminder as we go into the future here, we have kids competing for state championships in the next 3 weeks. And so I think we have 115 kids competing on next Friday and Saturday. They're not this coming, but 2 weeks from now. And we know that some of those kids are going to qualify for nationals. So what I'm just going to remind people of is that we will raise money to get them where they need to go. But as we do that, it's important to not think like, oh, why are they raising money when we have all those things going on? And so some of our ASP accounts are fat, and we know that. But it's our fundraised money in order to pay for those kids to go to nationals. And so when you look at the funds, please think about the fact that those ASP accounts, like I know my protective services account has $15,000 in it, but it's there to pay for those kids this summer to go to nationals. And so please be aware that just because there's a money in an account, that it's fundraised money from selling Christmas trees and picking up garbage at the Oktoberfest and all of those other events. And so we just want to make people aware. We're going to work really hard to get them there. We had 10 kids qualify for FBLA nationals over the weekend. We had 6 kids win state championships at FFA 3 weeks ago. And so we had 23 kids last year qualify for nationals at Skills USA. So we will do our best to get there, but as people hear what's going on, it's not the school spending money, it's the money that our kids are earning to make it to the next level, and we want to really support them in doing that.
I really appreciate this comment, and I actually did receive this kind of from the community too. People who have fundraised money are concerned about what's happening to that money, and so I'm hoping that staff can give us some kind of an answer, maybe not right now, but if you can give us one right now.
We'll make some clear messaging, but we're not taking people's fundraising money to cover this kind of a portion. So I wrote it down just so I can make sure I inform our principals about certain things, but I did hear this from someone else too. You know, we're not going to cover 8.8 million by selling candy bars. We're taking money that we had already done. So but it is important for people to know that because it does show up in the general fund, right? And so those things kind of get mixed up. I've had to ask Kim 15 times, and she's very patient with me, just around where they sit in there to make sure, because you heard earlier where you have some that are above and some that are below.
Yeah.
But those kinds of things are the fundraised by students, parents, all the rest of the things. So that's not where we're going to be looking for ways to solve the
and appreciate that you have a positive balance in your.
Good job. Yeah.
Thank you, Kirsten. That was important.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kirsten.
Anybody else?
Yeah. Daniel, can you promote, I think it's Sarah Weitzman?
Hey everybody, Sarah Weitzman, mom in the Silver Falls School District, just talking about for myself this evening and budget issues mostly. I just wanted to highlight 3 quick things. One, I was hoping to maybe get a parent square or district-wide communication. One, kind of a press statement from the school board, maybe about everything that has happened, but also 2, maybe to get Dr. Morlock's email address now that he started with us so that we can, as a community, also communicate with him. Secondly, Dr. Barnes reminded me that, you know, this is a really, really hard pill to swallow, and the cuts are going to be so difficult. And one of the things that I wanted to just talk about really briefly, mostly so that Dr. Morlock can hear this, is that arts education is so incredibly important. And I just really, really hope that that is not on the chopping block, because especially as you all know, we have fought, this entire community, all of us, not just me, but all of us have fought for so many years, especially for music and to get those elementary music teachers here. So I really just wanted to state that I know it's going to be really difficult, but just to have those thoughtful conversations about what it is that we do have to lose. And perhaps maybe it's time to think of some school closing or even cutting staff or expenditures that don't necessarily are directly involved with our direct involvement with students. I'm not talking about classified, I'm talking about just directly involved with students. And the third thing is that I would really like you guys to revisit maybe your public comment policy or something, because you all, 7 of you, are elected officials. And it is absolutely our constituents' right to criticize you by name. I would not, of course, I would want you to cut me off if I was criticizing somebody that works for the district, but you don't work for the district. And so I just think that this is a tough time, and I know that you guys are trying to do the best that you can, but Jennifer asked all of you to kind of, you know, try and each have a moment to apologize, and I appreciate those of you that did, but it is really unacceptable that for 3 years, especially you senior board members, missed this, and that we're not asking for budget things on the agenda. So I just was really upset that you tried to call Mr. Lammer. That's fine, Aaron, but it's not okay, because you guys are elected, and so we do have the right to criticize the 7 of you. So thank you, appreciate your time, and we're in a hard time, and I hope that we can figure this all out. So thanks, have a good night.
Thank you, Sarah. Anybody in the audience want to come speak? All right, we will move then to the future agenda item request item.
Do we need to do something on
Oh,
declaring
yep.
the vacancy?
Yes, we do, my bad. Thank you. We do need to declare the vacancy, so I think the motion can just read exactly the way it does in 12A for clarity.
I move that we declare a superintendent's vacancy as of July 1st, 2024.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we declare a superintendent vacancy starting July 1st, 2024. Any discussion? All right, let's vote.
Derek,
Yes.
Phil,
Yes.
Josh,
Yes.
Owen,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Jennifer.
Yes.
All in favor.
All right, now future agenda item request. We've talked about the TAN. We need to approve that soon. Let's say we're going to do it Thursday. Staff is going to let us know about the timing because Phil's got another obligation that night. Any other future agenda items?
Oh, sorry, Jennifer. So I thought about Phil's thing on Thursday night. Are we trying to meet or not?
Yeah, we can meet on Thursday.
It's gonna be a short meeting, right? It's just like
Yes.
voting to pass or not pass.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
should
And
we-
so
we
he
can
just
do
has
that
to be done by
remotely?
8 o'clock.
Remotely, probably, right?
I think we can. Send anybody have thoughts about?
Because it's just for an
Yeah.
action item.
Yeah, no, I'd hate to, especially where Daniel has to set this whole thing up and for one issue
Well,
things, it doesn't make
since
sense.
we're talking about it, you know, there was people commenting on Facebook, they were pretty upset about that, like, well, why no public comment? So I don't know, like, I understand, like, we're just having these meetings to get stuff done, but I don't know what normal policy is. If we're gonna have more meetings, do we have to add more public comment times or not?
We don't have to, we can, and we have chosen to do that in the past. Before I started on the board, I think it was when Tom was still here, and maybe even Aaron and Owen. There used to be public comment at every regular meeting and every work session. And then the work session.
Work sessions. Not a work session.
Never?
No.
Yeah.
Okay. We only just had them then at regular meetings. Every once in a while at a work session, if we have an action item, we will open it up. We can open it up anytime we want, but it really makes sense to do that well ahead of time so that the public knows.
I'm not advocating for it, I was just expressing the sentiment and just kind of knowing how we felt out as a board, I guess. I mean, I personally would like to be just in and out of those real quick.
Yep.
You know, and get to the business at hand. But I also want to be sensitive to the public that they're probably going to be watching every single meeting here going forward and want to have as much as a say going forward, so.
Well, and so that's our regular, we
Yeah.
always have it during our regular meetings, and then sometimes when we add it, when we can. So that's something we can decide to do depending on the topic. Is that something that you think we need to do for the tan?
No, I don't know.
All right.
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, if someone has some really substantive information, they can send an email with some links, data we can process and consider before the meeting.
Yeah.
Better than, 30 seconds before the vote.
Yes.
And I'm reading, I'll read every one of those emails and try to respond to everyone as thoughtfully and personally as possible, so. Good.
All right, so any other future agenda item requests? All right, without objection, meeting adjourned.